This podcast is supported by The Real Real. Meet Christine. She loves shopping. And this is the sound of fashion overload. Too many fabulous things, not enough space. So Christine started selling with The Real Real.
I've always loved collecting designer pieces. Gucci bags, Prada heels. But my style keeps evolving. Selling with The Real Real? Game changer. I earn more, and they do everything.
Seriously, just drop off your items or schedule a pickup. We handle the photos, descriptions, pricing, even shipping. You just sit back and watch your items sell fast to our 40 million members.
And I get peace of mind knowing I earn more selling with The Real Real than anywhere else.
Exactly. That's the sound of your closet working for you. The Real Real. Earn more, save time, sell fast. And right now, you can get an extra $100 to shop when you sell for the first time. Go to therealreal.com to get your extra $100. Therealreal.com. That's therealreal.com.
You are listening to the complete second season of Fear FM. The Narakaranya forest is like a cancer that never stops spreading. A disease that conquers vital organs, eats away at vitality and promise and hopes. And the roots and branches and leaves and vines that inhabit its fertile soil carry the stench of evil. In the outskirts of the western suburbs of the city of Indraprastha, the forest borders onto a large block of land where the vestiges of a failed theme park exists. Shoddy construction work and a lengthy legal battle had taken down the developers and those who commissioned the work. What's left of it stood as a decaying homage to a great dream. The unfinished rides and carousels and car parks sat waiting for the colorful throng of children and their parents. Antisocial elements and thrill seekers now visited these parts at night. But in the mornings, poor or lower-income middle-class families that couldn't afford expensive activities for their children turned up. They came to enjoy the sunny afternoons at the large children's park the developers had managed to finish as stage one of the project. A sunny day in March. Families from Bhuvaneshwari society enjoyed snacks packed in old newspapers and tiffin boxes and drank rasna that was so diluted with water they may as well have drank tap water. The smell of delicacies fried in 3-day-old oil permeated the air. So did laughter. So did love. While these families may not be Ambanis, they were rich in love. Unbeknownst to the adults, 2 teenagers sneaked away from the group. They ducked underneath a damaged chain-link fence and journeyed some distance into the forest, away from the prying eyes of the adults. When they reached a clearing where the sun streamed through the leaves and lit up every blade of grass, Deepa Malhotra handed Anjali Prasad a small packet. It contained a white substance. "Go ahead, put some in your palm, and you can either snort it or lick it," Deepa said. "What?" "No," Anjali responded. "Stop being a pussy, Anjali," Deepa said, looking disappointed. "If my parents find out, they will skin me alive," Anjali said. "Why the hell do you think we are here, Buddhu? Far away from those enemies of fun and joy," Deepa said animatedly. "I don't know." Anjali was not coping with this scenario. When Deepa said she had something secretive to share with her, she should have known better and not embarked on this foolish adventure. Let me guess. What I am doing is not socially acceptable. Lord Ganesh will punish me, etc., etc. Deepa said in a mocking tone and then started laughing. No, I've heard bad things about using drugs. People go crazy, Anjali said. Bakwas. You can use it once in a while and nothing will happen. People who turn into addicts are people who have no control over themselves. We are perfectly in control of ourselves. Come on, yaar, Deepa insisted. But Anjali started looking around uncomfortably. It gives you a little high for a while, makes you feel good, and then you go back to being a good girl for the rest of your family and the society, Deepa said. Anjali grabbed the packet of Deepa reluctantly. Okay, I will give it a try. Please, I want no one to find out. You know how these aunties and uncles are. They will brand us as drug addicts, Anjali said. Anjali hated herself for succumbing to the pressure, but didn't want to disappoint her best friend either. Deepa was a lost cause. If Anjali didn't love her, if she gave up on her, then there was nothing stopping her from disappearing into her world of risk-taking and misadventures. Anjali couldn't do that to Deepa. She remembered the quote, "You like someone for their qualities. You love someone for their flaws." When Anjali looked at Deepa, she felt more than a sense of friendship. She felt sisterhood. The belief that her friend would stand by her no matter what. Fuck these motherfuckers, Deepa said. You get into this cycle of listening to whatever they say and behaving the way they want you to behave. Soon they will tell you what to study, what to eat, whom to marry. I mean, they already do that, but do you want to be more subservient than you already are? Deepa said. Deepa noticed that her rage was making Anjali uncomfortable. She suddenly softened her facial features and smiled at Anjali. Look, it's a bit of fun, and I wanted to share it with my best friend. If you don't want to be a part of it, fine. I have other friends who I can enjoy it with. Deepa observed a shift in Anjali's demeanor. She liked how her consummate skills at emotional blackmailing worked a treat. Anjali opened the bag and popped some powder onto her palm and lowered her mouth to it. A noise in the shrubs. Someone walking towards them. Then a voice. What is that? What are you doing, girls? Seema, the teenage daughter of one of their family friends, looked alarmingly at the powder in Anjali's palms. What is this? Are you girls doing drugs? Seema said. Deepa knew where this was headed. Miss Goody Two-Shoes was going to run to her parents and tell them all about their misadventures. She would flash the news in school about two junkies who lived in her society. She would deliver a blow-by-blow account of the event to every uncle and auntie who visited their household. The tale of the two wayward girls, Anjali and Deepa, two addicts who were well on their way to bringing dishonor to the educated, self-respecting residents of Bhuvaneshwari society. Anjali, who was now shaking in fear, brushed away the powder. The bag fell to the ground. What is that? Tell me the truth, Seema said. No, it's nothing, Anjali blurted. I know you girls were up to no good when I saw you sneaking away. I will have to tell my parents, Seema said. No, you don't, Anjali said with folded hands. Deepa whacked at Anjali's folded hands. What the hell are you begging for? Deepa then turned to Seema. We are just looking at something we found on the ground. Oh yeah? Where is it? Show me this innocent powder you were looking at, Seema said. Deepa spotted the pack on the ground, partially covered by some dry leaves, but pretended to look around. After a while, she shook her head and said, "I'm not sure where it has gone." Then she turned to Anjali and asked, "Did you see it, Anjali?" "Liar," Seema said. "I will tell everyone." Deepa's tone and demeanor changed. "No, you fucking won't." Deepa grabbed a small broken branch lying next to her and rushed at Seema. Seema ran, Deepa closely following her. Anjali joined in, shouting, "Stop, both of you! Stop! Let's talk!" They ran at top speed in the direction of the park where the adults were enjoying their picnic. But they soon realized they had taken a wrong turn and gotten lost. As soon as this realization dawned on her, Seema halted, turned around, and looked at her pursuers. "Oh no, I think we are lost because of you bitches." Deepa and Anjali both stopped and bent down at their waist, like they were about to heave, their wheezing from the exertion of the sprint louder than the sounds of the forest. Seema watched them and smiled, as if an idea had just dawned on her. She walked backwards, keeping her pursuers in her sight, saying, "This is all because of you. But it doesn't matter. I remembered something, a landmark I saw on the way. I think I know how to get back. Let's stop this stupid chase." "You will still be telling them what you saw," Deepa said angrily. Seema shook her head as if to say no. "Yeah, you will. That is the kind of venomous snake you are," Deepa said. Deepa and Seema had a deep history of school-based rivalry running all the way to their days in primary school. "Shut up! Shut up!" Anjali said. "You will have to find out the hard way, won't you?" Seema said mockingly, still walking backwards. "Fuck you," Deepa said. "Stop fighting, you two. Let's work together to get out of this mess," Anjali said. "I love how you sound like a pragmatic goody two-shoes, Anjali. I always knew that was an act. You are a too-big junkie, just like that bitch friend of yours," Seema responded. Deepa showed Seema her middle finger. Seema kept walking backwards, and then, suddenly, she disappeared, as if the earth had swallowed her whole.
This podcast is supported by The Real Real. Meet Christine. She loves shopping. And this is the sound of fashion overload. Too many fabulous things, not enough space. So Christine started selling with The Real Real.
I've always loved collecting designer pieces. Gucci bags, Prada heels. But my style keeps evolving. Selling with The Real Real? Game changer. I earn more, and they do everything.
Seriously, just drop off your items or schedule a pickup. We handle the photos, descriptions, pricing, even shipping. You just sit back and watch your items sell fast to our 40 million members.
And I get peace of mind knowing I earn more selling with The Real Real than anywhere else.
Exactly. That's the sound of your closet working for you. The Real Real. Earn more, save time, sell fast. And right now, you can get an extra $100 to shop when you sell for the first time. Go to therealreal.com to get your extra $100. Therealreal.com. That's therealreal.com.
"Oh no!" Anjali exclaimed as she ran towards the spot where Seema had seemingly disappeared. She could now see what the poor girl had missed as she walked backwards, taunting her and Deepa. A pit surrounded by dead roots and browning grass and dry earth, like the maw of a predator. It was 12 feet deep, with oddly smooth walls. Anjali heard a cry for help as she walked close to the edge of the pit and peered in. Presently, the bottom of the pit was lit by the afternoon sun. She saw Seema, her face covered in dirt, reaching up as if she was expecting Anjali to magically stretch her arms out and rescue her. Was this a well back in the day? Deepa, who had now reached the spot, said to Anjali. Doesn't matter. We need to get her out of there, Anjali said. Deepa stared at the helpless figure waving at them from the bottom of that hole. Help me! Help me! Find my parents, please! Seema said. The sun is still out, so you can see down there, girl. Imagine when it gets dark, Deepa said. Stop it, Anjali said to Deepa. There is no need to be cruel to her. No need to be cruel, Deepa thought. Every insult, every instance of bullying Deepa had suffered at the hands of Seema now flashed in front of her eyes. Let's leave this bitch down there for half a day before telling anyone. That will teach her a lesson, Deepa said. A second later, her eyes lit up and she said, Better still, let's promise her help only if she agrees to keep her mouth shut. Not funny, Anjali said as she looked around for a rope or a vine, something she could use to get Seema out. I think we will need to get the adults involved. Deepa, why don't you go and get some help? Anjali said. I'm not doing shit for this dipper-dobber. You should go. I will keep watch. Make sure she doesn't get eaten by spiders. The last part of that sentence, Deepa shouted into the cave, eliciting a shriek from Seema. Deepa laughed. I'm not going to let you stand guard if you are going to be nasty to her, Anjali said. Deepa made a zipping motion across her mouth with the fingers on her right hand. Not a peep from me, madam, Deepa said. Anjali looked her up and down in distrust. Promise? Promise. Anjali turned her attention back to Seema. Seema, I'm going for help. What was the landmark you said would lead us back to our families? Anjali said. Keep walking to your left and you will see a large rock that looks like a human head. Take the path to the right of it, Seema said. Well, it looks like you know this place well, which means you must come here with the junkies. Or do you come here to fuck that rich nightclub owner's son? You have a lot of guts criticizing us, you, Deepa ranted. Stop it! What did I tell you? Anjali said. I'm sorry, Deepa said. What if it was you down there? Anjali said. Do you think this bitch would help us if that was the case? If the roles were reversed? Would she be nice to poor, ugly, worthless Deepa? Deepa said, glancing at Seema hatefully. I would help you. I'm your friend. And I'm sure she would too. Any half-decent human being would. And that is precisely what I'm trying to tell you. Deepa, if you want my friendship, I expect you to be decent. I expect you to help this poor girl, Anjali said. They could both hear Seema crying from the bottom of the pit. For the first time in a long time, Deepa felt shame. She was ashamed that she had considered using the misfortune that had befallen Seema to seek revenge, to humiliate her. Go, get help, Deepa said, patting Anjali's shoulder. Seema, I am here. I'm going to wait with you. Anjali will get us help, Deepa said. Seema's cries grew louder. She was seated on the ground, head in hands. Go, Deepa said. Thank you, Anjali said as she waved goodbye to her friend. Be strong. Anjali fought the voice in her head which asked her not to abandon Seema. It told her not to trust Deepa, told her she was making a grave mistake. But Anjali kept walking. She had never been good at talking sense into her best friend. But she needed to believe that Deepa would not betray her trust when a human life was involved. Don't get lost, pal, Deepa shouted out to her departing friend. Deepa watched on as Anjali disappeared into the bushes. A tight knot formed in her belly. What if Anjali got lost? Deepa shook her head to remove the thought from her mind and moved closer to the edge of the pit and looked down. Talk to me, Seema. Seema did not respond. She was glaring at something. She suddenly stood up and looked up at Deepa. I think there is a small tunnel ahead. I think I can crawl through it, Seema said. Don't. You don't know where that will take you. You have no light. You might get lost, Deepa said. You're right, Seema said. I just want to get out of here. Anjali will be back soon, so just sit tight. Talk to me. That should keep your mind clear of any crazy ideas like the one you've just had, Deepa said. Seema laughed nervously. Deepa joined in. I'm sorry for the things I have said. Sorry for the things I have done to you, Seema said. She sounded genuinely repentant, which made Deepa's feelings of guilt worse. No, you are not, monkey, Deepa said. That's a tame name coming from you, Miss Foulmouth, Seema responded. They both laughed, and laughed, and laughed, till Seema stopped laughing. Deepa, there is a sound coming from the tunnel, Seema said. Must be a rat or something. Don't lose your shit. Stay calm. Something is coming through, Seema said. Deepa looked down into the pit and saw Seema bent at her waist, peering into the darkness. It looks like a... Seema said. What is going on? Deepa said. Seema scrambled away to a section of the pit where Deepa couldn't see her. Deepa ran around to the other side, hoping to catch a glimpse of Seema. She could only see her feet. Stay calm, Deepa said. She looked around for something to throw into the pit. She saw a large rock next to her. She picked it up and looked back down into the pit. At a creature dressed in red. Its face obscured by shadows. Its human hands were latched around Seema's neck. The petrified girl was struggling and begging for help. The creature looked up at Deepa. Its grip tightened around Seema's neck as she squirmed and kicked. Deepa heard the creature's voice, clear as the day. Something vulnerable and monstrous at the same time. Something human and ethereal at the same time. You should come down too and help me with the ceremony. Join your friend. You You are after all the right age. Deepa picked up the rock and threw it down into the pit. The creature moved to avoid the projectile, and in doing so, light from above fell on its horrid face. Deepa would never forget that sight till the day she died. It would haunt her waking and sleeping hours, conjure the kind of fear that would paralyze her body. The monster moved at the speed of lightning, dragging the hapless screaming Seema into the dark tunnel. For an instant, Deepa's eyes locked with Seema's fearful eyes, and it felt like her heart was about to be sliced open. Deepa wanted to leap in and help the girl, but she lacked the courage. For all the big talk she delivered about being rough and tough and the ultimate tomboy, her bravado failed her in that moment. Fear had frozen her legs to the spot. Deepa did nothing. A scream died in her throat as she watched Seema being dragged away. "15 years later, Detective Inspector Anjali Prasad took in the sparse nature of her existence as she removed her boxing gloves. No photographs, no paintings, a rarely used TV, one couch, a small dining table with one chair. Things used to be different, and she had just finished punishing those memories on the sand-filled punching bag in the basement of her home. She wiped her sweat with a sports towel and switched on the coffee machine. The only luxury she had allowed herself in this monk-like existence. It was either coffee or hitting the whiskey bottle hard. A necessary addiction to cope with life. She poured the hot coffee into a plain white ceramic mug. Then she sat at the table, leafing through her current case file. Teenage girls missing from their homes around the city. 13 of them so far. No break-ins. No involvement of sexual predators via Snapchat or Instagram. No naive escapades involving boyfriends. Just healthy, happy teenage girls vanishing into thin air. Based on her assessment, the girls had willingly gotten out of their beds, opened their front doors, and walked out of the lives of their parents. In the beginning, during the days of heady optimism about how quickly the police force were going to crack the case, Anjali's diligence and excellent work ethic had brought the case file to her desk. Her boss was glowing with pride as he discussed her name at the early emergency meetings called to coordinate the investigation. "Anjali has always been a great representative of our organization. She is the best of us, and I have complete faith she will resolve this mystery and bring the girls back to us." That was 13 missing girls ago. Things were not hunky-dory now. Anjali was no longer the poster girl for Indraprastha city's law enforcement units. She was by all accounts a failure, and her misery compounded when her mobile rang. She let it ring for a bit, dreading what she was going to hear from the caller. When she did pick up the phone finally, Her fears were realized. "There has been another one," the voice at the other end said. The circumstances of the case were so similar, she might as well not have turned up. There were minimal cameras in the city, and the imagery provided by the first-generation units were not great. They had trawled through hours of grainy footage and not found anything of use. No suspicious vehicles, no witness accounts. The parents definitely did not hear a thing. The teenage girl in this house on Idiniva Street had disappeared just like the 13 others. Anjali watched on dejectedly as the father of the missing girl tried to console his hysterical wife. They knew that the police had failed in previous instances. They knew in their heart that their daughter's name would disappear into the labyrinthine world of cold cases. Anjali walked into the teenage girl's room, decorated with manga and Bollywood posters, featuring androgenic characters, smiling almost eerily at the tragedy that originated in this room. A pink diary with its locked-away secrets sat on the desk. Anjali didn't need to read them anymore. She knew what crushes and insecurities and dreams lay within. It was like reading a testimony of her failures. Her failures, which had robbed these girls of their futures. She felt lightheaded and had to steady herself on the bedpost. God, show me a path. How am I going to help these girls? She picked up her mobile phone and sent out a description of the missing girl to the control room for immediate dispatch to interstate police. It had to be sex trafficking syndicates or the organ farming mafias or a predator who was smart enough to outwit the entire force. She might have been at the verge of giving up, but she was not done fighting for the lives of these girls yet. A constable interrupted her thoughts with a gentle tap on Anjali's shoulder. "Madam, there is someone here to see you about the case. Insists she has some inside information. If you ask me, she looks like a nut job. But I thought I will let you know." "Why didn't you try to find out more from her?" Anjali said. "She will only talk to you," the constable said. "This better be worth my time." "Okay, I'll be there in a second," Anjali said. Anjali quickly scanned the room and breathed in the sadness blanketing its otherwise cheerful vibe before she stepped out to meet the person. It took Anjali some moments to come to terms with who she was looking at. This sad, distressed, filthy figure in a t-shirt and jeans. Her hair badly in need of a cut and a wash. Her unloved skin aging her by about 10 years. Her long, dirty nails constantly scratching at the needle marks on her arms. Time hadn't been kind to Deepa Malhotra. "What do you want, Deepa?" Anjali said. "Oh, hi, hi, Anjali." Deepa could barely maintain eye contact with Anjali. She kept looking at the ground every few seconds. "Hi, do you have something for me?" Anjali said, annoyance writ large on her face. "Anjali, I know you asked me not to contact you ever again. And I'm sorry about everything that has happened. But I had to. You will understand when you hear me out. I had to reach out to you," Deepa said. "Is this something about the case I am investigating right now? Or does this have to do with another horrible surprise you have got planned for your family and friends? Anjali said. Deepa said. Tell me what you have got and get out of here, Anjali said. I didn't mean to steal from you. I was sick, Anjali, Deepa said. You're still sick, Anjali said. Deepa scratched her forearms furiously, as if to counter a surge of guilt coursing through her body. The Lal Chudail. She is behind these disappearances. I have been saying things, getting these visions for weeks now. She is taking the girls to her. Deepa started. Stop right there. Lal Chudail, the bullshit story you cooked up to satiate the guilt of your failure to look after Seema has now been resurrected again. So you can come back into my life, steal some more of my money to fund your drug habit. I'm your friend. I wouldn't lie to you, Deepa said. Let's correct that statement. You were my friend, and you failed that duty like you failed in everything else in your life. Like you failed to look after Seema, Anjali said. Anjali was suddenly transported to the mouth of the pit in the woods, where she arrived with the adults to find hysterical Deepa, blathering on about a figure dressed in red who had dragged Seema away into a tunnel. There was indeed a tunnel that led into a large network of caves, where silence and bats dwelled. While that discovery was a surprise, there was no indication that Seema had been spirited away by an unknown assailant, nor did they find her body. Anjali had always thought that the likely scenario was that as soon as she left, Deepa had started bullying Seema, who then decided to crawl through the tunnel and go walkabout, only to find herself lost and eventually met with a fatal accident. The size of the cave system meant the authorities had missed her body. To this day, Anjali regretted leaving Deepa behind, regretted trusting her former best friend. Anjali felt she deserved part of the blame too, but she did not deserve this woman's wild theories about her current case. She didn't have time for this bullshit. I know how you hate me for the things I have done. But listen to me, Anjali, listen to me. I swear on my parents, I saw that creature drag away Seema, and now I'm getting visions that tell me Lal Chudail has something to do about this. She told me she needs me for the ceremony, Deepa said. The Lal Chudail is the invention of the residents of Karipur, a myth told to scare children, that you have appropriated for your own selfish reasons. Deepa, I want you to stop this rubbish right now and get out of my face, Anjali said. I thought you would understand. I thought you would help. If you don't do this, more girls are going to disappear, Deepa said. Get lost, you wretch. You need rehab. Oh, wait. How many times have you been in rehab now? Anjali said. Deepa cried. I got nothing now. I got no friends. I got no family. I've got a chance to do something good, and I came to you thinking. Deepa wiped her tears. I heard you have a daughter, so I thought you would have some sympathy for these girls, Deepa said. Anjali rushed at Deepa, grabbed her by the collar with one hand and raised a fist. Don't you dare, Don't you fucking dare! She took in a deep breath and regained her composure and let go of Deepa's collar. She turned around and walked back to the house. And as she departed, Deepa heard her former best friend clearly say, "I wish it was you who got lost and died in that cave."
This podcast is supported by The Real Real. Meet Christine. She loves shopping. And this is the sound of fashion overload. Too many fabulous things, not enough space. So Christine started selling with The Real Real.
I've always loved collecting designer pieces. Gucci bags, Prada heels. But my style keeps evolving. Selling with The Real Real? Game changer. I earn more and they do everything.
Seriously, just drop off your items or schedule a pickup. We handle the photos, descriptions, pricing, even shipping. You just sit back and watch your items sell fast to our 40 million members.
And I get peace of mind knowing I earn more selling with The Real Real than anywhere else.
Exactly. That's the sound of your closet working for you. The Real Real. Earn more, save time, sell fast. And right now, you can get an extra $100 to shop when you sell for the first time. Go to therealreal.com to get your extra $100. Therealreal.com. That's therealreal.com.
Hey, darling sister. Are you going to be late as usual? Or are you going to turn up before Nimisha cuts the cake? Anjali's brother, Ashik, said. I promise. I will be there half an hour before the party begins, and I will help you out in the kitchen, Anjali said. Oh, we don't need you to slave away in the kitchen. We've organized a catering company to sort out the food, Ashik said. Please don't pump the young demons with sugar, Anjali said. We will try not to, but all they eat at this age is chips and full-strength Coke. Go figure, Ashik said. Last time I was there, I had a headache that lasted for days from their constant chatter, Anjali said. At least teenagers are better than little children, Ashik offered. I miss that though. What I would give to hear my little girl talk non-stop about dinosaurs, Anjali said. I'm sorry, sister, Ashik said. It's okay, Ashik. I was just remembering. Sister, I got to go. Tell Nimisha she will be getting the books from her favorite vampire romance series. Again, Anjali said. She will no doubt love that, Ashik said. Bye, Ashik. Bye, Anjali. Anjali switched off her phone and gazed at the spot on the wall where a family photo used to hang. She settled into a chair and stared at the spot, tears streaming down her cheeks. You ready for your big birthday tomorrow? Ashik said from the doorway as he watched his daughter settle into her bed. Why do they call it Sweet 16? Nimisha asked. Because this is the beginning of all sweet things in life, Ashik said. Bullshit, Nimisha said. Language, Ashik said sternly. Nimisha poked a tongue at him. Your aunt has promised to gift you the latest book in that crappy vampire series you love so much, Ashik said. Excuse me, it's not crappy. And Nathan Longfang, the main character, is so hot, Nimisha said. All right, vampire lover, go to bed. I love you, Ashik said with a smile. Love you, Daddy, Those 3 words warmed his heart every time she said it. He lived for that utterance. Every single day of his last 16 years he spent with his darling daughter had been wonderful. And he didn't want that sweetness to end. Now that she was close to 18, he knew she would be leaving home in a couple of years for studies and travel. But he did not want to entertain these thoughts, because regardless of his tough exterior, he was a softy at heart when it came to his daughter. He paused for a moment outside the doorway, hoping to catch the sound of her breathing and settling into her warm bed. Then he retired to his own bedroom. Nimisha was woken up by sounds coming from downstairs. It sounded like a party was going on in their living room. She checked the time. 12:01. Did her parents plan to kickstart a party at 1 minute past midnight? That was unusual. None of her friends would be allowed out of their homes at this time of the night. But her father did say that a 16th birthday was a special event. Sweet 16. She jumped out of her bed and sneaked out of her room, wearing her Wonder Woman slip-ons, which were soft and barely made a sound. She didn't see any lights downstairs as she slowly walked down the stairs. At this point, she was certain that as soon as she got to the bottom of the stairs, they were going to switch on the lights, scream surprise, and throw confetti at her. Imagine that. But as soon as she reached the last step, the sounds of the party disappeared. "Daddy? Mummy?" she said, looking around. "Where are you guys hiding?" The front door, which opened into the living room, was ajar. There was someone standing in the veranda, looking in through the open door at her. A faint beam of light from the street lamps revealed the red fabric that was wrapped around the figure. As birthday party surprises went, this was a weird one. Something was not right. The person stepped forward, the light beam now revealing one half of her face. A beautiful woman who could have been a Bollywood actress. Nimisha was so enamored by her beauty, she involuntarily said, "Wow." The woman extended a hand forward. "I have something for you on your birthday. A special treat from your parents." "Mummy? Daddy?" This was not real. She shook her head from side to side to wake up from what she now considered to be a nightmare. But she soon realized that she was not in her bed. This was reality. Every terrifying second of it. The air in the living room grew cold. The wind picked up behind the woman. A strange burning smell permeated the air as a sliver of light emerged from behind her, tearing the fabric of reality. It shredded away the visual of her suburban street and revealed the insides of a cave system. The light grew brighter. Nimisha was frozen to the spot. She kept calling out for her mummy and daddy, kept willing her legs to take her back up the stairs. In vain. The woman merged into the light till she disappeared into it completely. Nimisha shielded her eyes to escape its intensity. Then she heard someone snigger from behind her. She turned round quickly, only to feast her eyes on the deformed face of the woman in red. Anjali struggled to fall asleep, and when she did, she found herself dreaming about the cave that Seema disappeared into. Sunlight filtered in through the mouth of the pit, which barely lit the innards of the cave system. Anjali just stood there, listening to the eerie sounds of that subterranean world. It filled her with dread. Why was she here? To what end? Seema had disappeared years ago. Or had she? Just ahead of her, emerging from the shadows, was a teenage girl dressed in Seema's clothes. Her face was covered with long strands of wet hair. Her skin was pale white, with black webbed patterns decorating parts of it. At first, Anjali thought the low-light conditions were playing tricks on her eyes. Surely, this couldn't be Seema, Anjali thought. The girl walked up to her calmly and stood in front of her. She did not move. "Who are you?" Anjali asked. The girl said nothing. "What do you want?" Anjali, startled by the ringtone, looked down at the buzzing phone in her pocket. When she looked up, her niece Nimisha's rotting face stared at her, fear written all over it. "You should grab that call!" Anjali woke up with a scream. It took her a solid minute to regain her composure. She finally attended to the call. "Anjali? Anjali? Nimisha's gone," her brother Ashik said on the phone. The objective side of Anjali's intellect, which demanded that she look at the facts of the case dispassionately, conflicted with the grief in her heart. Nimisha was gone. No one should go through the pain of losing a child, not even once. But Anjali, it seemed, was cursed to bear that pain again. Anjali never treated Nimisha like her niece. The girl was a part of her flesh, so it hurt even to breathe. She didn't know how her brother was maintaining his composure as he answered the queries of the assisting detective she was supervising. Her superiors had asked her to take a back seat on this one, given the personal nature of the circumstances. But it made sense for her to be present, given she was the lead detective on the case. She sat on Nimisha's bed, running her hand over a copy of her favorite vampire romance novel. Anjali imagined Nimisha's beautiful fingers leafing through the pages, her gorgeous brown eyes scanning the text. It seemed her niece had walked out through the front door and disappeared like the others. She already knew in her heart that in the days ahead they would go through the same rigmarole of combing every shred of evidence, only to end up with dead ends and frustration. Ashik, her brother, who had just finished answering questions, came over and hugged her. promise me you will bring her back," he said. Anjali hesitated for a while before she responded, "I promise." Ashik must have detected the lack of conviction in her voice. He pulled back from the embrace, held her by the shoulders and said, "You are the most brilliant person I have known in my whole life. One of the best detectives in the force. If you don't try, if you don't put your heart and soul into finding Nimisha, she will be lost to us forever. You get that, Behan?" "I will do my best," she said. Ashik nodded and exited Nimisha's room. Anjali could hear Nimisha's mother's wails from the downstairs bedroom. The mother blamed herself for sleeping soundly through the night. Anjali stepped towards one of the windows and looked outside into the street. Tears welled up in her eyes. A flood of grief that she had tried to dam up inside her burst forth. A woman, dressed in red, appeared on the opposite side of the street. Anjali squeezed out the tears in her eyes to counter her blurry vision. She could finally see the horrifying, unnaturally wide grin on that disfigured face. The woman seemed to be taunting her. Anjali ran down the stairs and into the front room and exited the house, only to find an empty footpath. Where did she go? The red-clad woman was nowhere to be seen. The Lal Chudel? No, that can't be. Anjali fought the suggestion that her mind had just planted in her consciousness. And the more she fought it, the more she regretted not listening to Deepa. She could have at least considered what Deepa intended to tell her. The strains of sorrow, a wail, a thump. Occasionally, that dreadful funereal silence draped her brother's home like a white sheet covering a dead body. She gazed at the house for several minutes, then put in a call to the police control room to track down Deepa. She had just finished visiting a fifth homeless shelter in the city looking for Deepa when the phone rang. It was one of her colleagues who had offered to ring around the rehab clinics to see if they could trace Deepa. "I got nothing for you, Anjali. Sorry," her colleague said. "It's okay. Thanks for ringing around for me," Anjali said. "They all recognize Deepa from the description I gave them, but they said they haven't seen her in a while," her colleague said. "It's all right. Thanks again," Anjali said. Anjali hung up. She put her hands on her hip and let out a big sigh. A notification chimed on her phone. A voicemail left for her while she was speaking to her colleague. "Anjali, I don't know why you are not returning my calls. I just want to talk. I know you believe in burying things deep to avoid confronting it, but this is not your grief alone. This is our sorrow. I need you to talk to me. Anjali switched off the phone. She knew what her ex-husband was going to say. She had heard it all before. No amount of talking or counseling was going to heal her broken heart. Anjali did not need his forgiveness. She had no desire to see his face. Anjali felt breathless, lightheaded. She walked to a nearby streetlight pole and leaned against it, trying to take in deep breaths. Flashes of that terrible night. The gunshots, the screams, the shattering glass. "Madam?" A voice interrupted the death spiral of emotions racking her body. An elderly woman, dressed in old, ill-fitting clothes, approached her. She looked hesitant. "How can I help you?" Anjali said, turning to face the woman. She was actually thankful for the distraction. I am from there," the old woman said, pointing to the homeless shelter. "I heard you ask around about that young girl," she said. "Deepa?" Anjali said. "Yes, I have met her a few times. I saw her yesterday when I was collecting food from the McDonald's kitchen," the old woman said. "Did she tell you where she was headed?" Anjali asked. "She was talking about going to the Taj Mahal for one last hurrah," the old woman said. The Taj Mahal was a notorious dilapidated old social housing block near Muzaffarjung, just off Mile 61 exit. It was the hub of drug sellers dishing out some of the most dangerous chemical substances known to man. Even the police were reluctant to head into the premises for investigations. Shit, Anjali responded. Deepa, you stupid girl," she said. The elderly woman from the shelter started jerking involuntarily, like the nerves in her body were misfiring. It was like watching a videotape stuck in a loop. "Are you okay?" Anjali asked. The woman, her body still racked by erratic movements, gave her a big, wide smile. She had seen that smile before. Across the street, from her brother's house. "One more thing," the old woman said. "She wants you to go back too." "Who? Deepa? Go back where?" Anjali asked. "No, not her. I will show you," the woman said. She proceeded to grab onto the top and bottom halves of her open mouth. Then she pulled apart both, half breaking her jaw and tearing open the flesh on her cheek. A horrified Anjali could see the pit of flesh, where her tongue snaked down into her throat. From within the dark, red, moist confines of that space emerged a single finger with a filthy, sharp nail. "It's me, Anjali. It's me. And I want you too," it said from inside the body of the poor old woman before she collapsed onto the floor. Anjali screamed in terror. Deepa gazed upon the sad monument the locals refer to as the Taj Mahal. Dirt and grime stained the once white facade of the 13-story apartment block. Graffiti in the form of gang tags and crudely drawn genitalia and words like cock and balls liberally decorated its walls. Little plastic packets, burned up remnants of joints, cigarette butts, and the occasional syringe were strewn on the cracked cement courtyard that led to the entrance of the building. This could be a visual representation of my childhood, Diba thought. Dysfunctional and violent and painful. The fog of time and lots of drugs had helped her wipe some parts of it clean from her mind. She entered the staircase of the building through one of the broken doors. "You will find Vetrowell on the 10th floor," one of the junkies from the homeless shelter had told her. "He's got the best stuff." She slowly walked up the stairs, fighting the urge to run like her ass was on fire. She needed to feel the needle press against her vein, needed that warmth to travel up and down her bloodstream, needed her inner eye closed so she didn't have to remember anything. She was on the 3rd floor when the voices stopped her. It was coming through the door that linked the stairwell to the corridor. Only the door looked like the door to her childhood home. Hesitantly, she pressed her ear against it, keen to hear the voices clearly. They were sounds from the past, all right. The Doordarshan show in muted tones, the sound of her mother slamming the ladle needlessly against the steel wok as she made aloo chole. The voice of her father berating her. "How many boys did you sleep around with today?" he said. Sounds of him belting her. The steel buckle featuring an American bald eagle slamming into her flesh. Deepa felt the pain in the echoes from that time in the past. Only it was alive and well now, on the other side of the door. "Just like your stupid slutty mother," her father said. "Why the hell are you blaming me?" her mother said as she emerged from the kitchen. "And what is the point of beating her now? You should have been around more instead of going out drinking with your friends. You were at that bar every single night while I was struggling with your daughter's antics." "Shut up and go to the kitchen," her father said. "Don't come out to lecture others when you can't feed your family on time." Next came the sound of her mother bringing out the piping hot wok from the kitchen and throwing its contents at her father's face. The sound of skin sizzling. She remembered that night now. How was it possible that the sounds were coming out through the door? Her father stopped screaming. She heard him walk up to the door and say, "I know you are listening, darling daughter. Sweet rebel. Doesn't matter how much you fight the system. You know what you are. You know what they called you. What was it again? Kala kaua, kala kaua." She remembered. Being on the ground, nursing the wound on her left elbow. Surrounded by her tormentors, the bullies from 11th grade. They had shoved her to the floor and were now clapping their hands and chanting the racist slogan, "Kala kaua, kala kaua." The door heated up like the surface of a clothes iron. She heard her father laugh in delight. Deepa pulled her ears away. Tears streamed down her face in rivulets. What she would give up for some sweet, sweet escape. She ran up the stairs. The gothic fashion, the rebellious tattoos, the metal piercings, the death metal bands screaming in her ears, the hard-edged persona she had carefully manufactured for herself. They had all failed to contain the horrors from her past, heal her wounded soul. She needed a hit right now. She had almost reached the 10th floor when she heard the cackling. She stopped and looked over the railing at the stairwells below her. Nothing. She turned away just for a second when she heard it again. She glanced back at the same spot. Staring back at her was a pair of intense eyes covered in filthy green pus. "I am coming for you!" The thing chased after her. The Lalchudale was here. It was not even hiding its presence anymore in the darkness of the night. Deepa ran for her life, the bile rising in her mouth, her heart pounding out of her chest, the lactic acid build-up in her legs threatening to slow her and land her in the vile grip of the apparition. "Kala Kawa, Kala Kawa!" The racist chant rendered by her father and her bullies filled the stairwell, echoing through the depressing grey stairway like a choir from hell. She had just reached the 10th floor and was about to open the door when a strong grip landed on her shoulder. It pulled her back into the cold shadows. Chills ran up and down her body as she surrendered to the will of that darkness. There was no point fighting it. It whispered into her ears. "I eagerly await your arrival, and I will embrace you as you are. Poison in your veins, hatred in your heart." Once it had conveyed its message, the evil form in the stairwell pushed Deepa onto the concrete floor of the corridor. She landed on her hands and knees. It felt like she was thrown out of a moving bus. Her pants were torn at the impact points. Her hands were bruised. She wept uncontrollably, cursing the past, loathing the present. "You want a hand there, sister?" a man's voice said. She looked up and saw Vetrivel's gaunt form towering over her. She raised a hand, and he struggled to pull her up. When she was on her feet, he licked his lips and offered, "You want something else, sister? If you don't have cash, there are other ways to pay for services rendered." He smiled like a kid in a candy store. This was the part Deepa hated the most, the bane of her existence, having to sell her body for a hit. But she was determined to get through it like she always did. By imagining that crystal melt and bubble up in a tablespoon, resting on a bed of flames.
This podcast is supported by The Real Real. Meet Christine. She loves shopping. And this is the sound of fashion overload. Too many fabulous things, not enough space. So Christine started selling with The Real Real.
I've always loved collecting designer pieces. Gucci bags, Prada heels. But my style keeps evolving. Selling with The Real Real? Game changer. I earn more and they do everything.
Seriously, just drop off your items or schedule a pickup. We handle the photos, descriptions, pricing, even shipping. You just sit back and watch your items sell fast to our 40 million members.
And I get peace of mind knowing I earn more selling with The Real Real than anywhere else.
Exactly. That's the sound of your closet working for you. The Real Real. Earn more, save time, sell fast. And right now, you can get an extra $100 to shop when you sell for the first time. Go to therealreal.com to get your extra $100. Therealreal.com. That's therealreal.com.
Anjali was on her way to the nefarious drug den known as Taj Mahal when her phone rang. Her ex-husband had rang earlier that morning, and she had ignored him. She did the same to the present call from her brother Ashik. Anjali did not have the emotional energy to deal with him. Traumatic situations invoke traumatic memories, and the past few days had been difficult as she struggled to prevent her mind from wandering down the alleyways of her past, trying to pry open doors that held within them painful memories about the tragedy that visited her family. She let the phone ring out as she took the exit to the western suburbs of Indraprastha city, driving past a large billboard advertising the Grand Asian Circus. She had taken her daughter to the show many years ago, in the same car. Anjali gazed at the empty backseat in the mirror with sadness. Her daughter had once sat there, eating popcorn and chattering non-stop about monkeys, tigers, and elephants who performed amazing tricks. "Can you leap through the air like the glitter people, Mummy?" she had asked her, referring to the trapeze artists in colourful clothing. Presently, Anjali laughed aloud at that memory and then looked at the rearview mirror. Sitting in the back seat was the smiling, mutilated form of her daughter, her head split open by bullets, her teeth stained with gore, her pink dress covered in bloodstains.
"She eats their eyes and drinks their hearts, Mummy,"
the little girl said. Anjali slammed hard on the brakes. The car swerved and straightened with an almighty shudder and then came to a hard stop. She was lucky that there was no one behind her. Anjali turned to find an empty backseat. No sign of the horrible apparition. "What is going on?" Anjali said. She whacked the car seat in frustration. A lonely stretch of road lay ahead of her. A path that would take her to deeper and some answers. She put the car into gear and sped ahead. Electrical engineer Sudeep Chakrabarti was having trouble sleeping. The recent upgrades to the electricity grid in the city had churned up a lot of tension at work. He found it difficult to switch off when he returned home from late shifts, which stretched way beyond the 10-hour approved limit. His 2 teenage children and wife had complained that his eyes appeared vacant when they tried to tell him about their day. He was not happy about this, nor was he thrilled about not getting enough sleep so he could wake up fresh to face another challenging day of arguing with city planners and dealing with errant workers. He shifted uncomfortably in his bed, turning left and then right, shuffling his feet together and occasionally scratching his head in frustration. It was the insomnia that guided him to the sound of the front door being opened. His ears pricked up and he leapt to his feet. The digital clock displayed an angry 2 a.m. on its screen. He headed to the living room cautiously. There he saw his teen daughter holding the door open and staring out into the night. "Komal, what are you doing out there at this god-awful hour?" he asked. Komal did not hear him. She stepped out of the front door, walked down the small flight of steps and headed towards the gate. It was still dark outside. There was a chill in the air. Sudeep ran after his daughter, calling out to her. Komal's attention seemed to be focused on a glowing light on the opposite side of the street. She opened the gate and crossed the road. Her hands raised to her chest, palms facing up, as if she was preparing to embrace someone. Sudeep could now see a figure in red emerge from the strange luminous tear in the fabric of reality. "Komal! Komal, stop!" he shouted after her. He pushed aside the half-open gate and stepped onto the road. He was now close enough to see the angry expression on the scarred face of the woman readying to welcome his daughter into her arms. That was before the water tanker ran over his soft body, shattering his bones, crushing his skull, and squashing his flesh against the hard asphalt. The spell was broken. The vile demon vanished, and Komal emerged from a strange dream to find herself standing on the footpath opposite her home, in a pair of blood-drenched pajamas featuring black and white photos of the singer Harry Styles. Soon, her screams would bring people in the neighborhood rushing out of their homes. "Hey, Vetrivel, one last hit, please," Deepa begged, as the dealer pulled up his jeans, closed his zipper, and wandered over to a table to drink a mouthful of thumbs-up straight from a plastic bottle. "I can fuck you no more, so I can't give you any more of the good stuff for free, sister," he said. "You got any money? Watches, etc., etc." "I don't, but I can try and get you some," Deepa said, swaying and flicking her tongue in and out like a snake. Her eyes were rolling around in their sockets like a carnival house ride. Her blurred vision placed Vetrivel at different points in the room every time she blinked. "De do na yaar," she said. "Bring me Gandhiji, sister, and I will oblige," he said, rubbing his fingers together to indicate cold, hard cash. Deepa tried to get up, but her legs felt heavy as lead. She wasn't making it out of the room without assistance. She tried to stand up one last time, but she landed on her ass real hard. Then she vomited. "Oh no, you disgusting piece of shit! Ah, look at what you've done to my den," Vetrivel said. He grabbed Deepa's clothes from the floor and helped her up at the same time. Then he walked her out of the room to the entrance of the stairwell and seated her down next to it. "Here, for old time's sake," he said, throwing a small packet with a single blue pill in it. Thanks, Deepa said, as she opened the packet and popped the pill onto her vomit-coated tongue. She closed her eyes. A doorway had opened in another dimension that took her far away from the filthy floor and her naked body. A doorway opened by the drugs she had just consumed. Here, in another plane of reality, was a new home for little Miss Deepa, where her parents greeted her with permanent smiles, where they would never raise a hand, never utter an uncouth word, a place she could return to every evening, the abode of people she could trust to share her problems with. It had light blue walls and blossoming spring flowers on its ceilings, and the floor was the azure, transparent, shallow surface of the ocean in Lakshadweep. Her parents played an Udit Narayan song on the Sony cassette player deck, and together they danced hand in hand. Bliss. Lost in that magical place, Deepa was not party to the betrayal her body was perpetrating on her. Her blood pressure dropped. There was foam coming out of her mouth. She lost control of her bowels. Deepa slid down the coarse surface of the wall she had been propped up against by the drug dealer, scratching her face in the process. Death was near. The colors in her room disappeared. The flowers and the ocean were replaced by shadows. Her parents changed too. Their bodies vibrated as they rapidly transformed into Lalchadale.
It's not your time yet, Deepa. Before you pass on, you will need to come to me. Help me with my ceremony. I will show you where I am.
The two forms of the Lalchadale that were once her parents said to her. They pulled Deepa close and whispered into her ears. Once they were done, they let go of her and walked backwards till they merged with the darkness in Deepa's imaginary home.
Your death will be by my hands, Deepa. Deepa! Deepa! Deepa!
Deepa? Deepa! Deepa! Anjali said, as she shook her friend who had overdosed. She slapped her across the cheek several times, trying to get her to wake up. Anjali had spent the last half an hour searching the dodgy corridors and the stairways of the building for her friend. And when she finally chanced on Deepa's terrible plight, she immediately placed a call for an ambulance and was now doing her best to prevent her from slipping into oblivion. I am not losing you, Anjali said. I am not losing one more person. I refuse to. When Deepa woke up, she saw Anjali staring out of the hospital room's window with a cup of steaming hot coffee in her hand. Hey, Deepa said feebly. Anjali placed her coffee on a table and approached Deepa. You have been coming in and out of mini beauty sleeps. Are you finally here? Awake? Anjali said. How many days? Deepa asked. 3, Anjali replied. And yes, you were this close to death, Anjali said, displaying a narrow space between her thumb and her forefinger. Thanks for looking after me. Why though? I thought you wanted me to get away from your life, Deepa said. Because I need some answers from you, Anjali said. Oh, Deepa looked disappointed. I don't know if you're ready to talk about it, Anjali said. Lalchadale, Deepa said. Anjali nodded. Why would I? You're not my friend. Why would I choose to help you? Oh, wait, now I am indebted to you because you saved my life, and I need to repay the debt with answers, Deepa said. I was a good friend to you. I was always a dear friend to you, till you screwed me over before my university admissions. I gave you some of the money my parents had saved for my fees. I thought you were going to use it to go to that rehab clinic in Noida. Instead, I find that you blew it on heroin and weed. And do you remember what you said when I confronted you about it? Anjali said. Deepa hung her head in shame. You told me you were setting an example for me, saving me from the drudgery of doing what my parents wanted me to do. You disrespected me and my parents. My parents had worked their arse off for that money. I decided that you had broken my trust for the last time, Anjali said. A single drop of tear travelled down Deepa's left cheek. That was when I decided you were not my friend anymore. And yes, I saved you because I need you to now help me deal with this Lal Chudel business. That is what you wanted, right? For me to believe you. Here I am. I believe you. I believe the Lal Chudel has something to do with the disappearance of all these teen girls, including my niece, Anjali said. Deepa whimpered and wiped her tears. Anjali sat on Deepa's bed and pointed a finger at her. But for us to find these girls, I need you to stay off the drugs. Can you do it? Anjali asked. Deepa nodded. We might not be friends, but I expect you to be a good partner. Lives depend on it, Anjali said. Yes, I will. I am a good person. I want to do something useful with my life, Deepa said. Anjali got up from the bed and walked towards a painting on the wall. It was a cheap dollar shop frame featuring a bad watercolor illustration of a forest at dusk, an essential feature of hospital rooms around the world. I have been seeing her horrible face, Anjali said. And seeing my... Her words got caught in her throat. She wants us to go to her, Deepa said. Why? Anjali said, turning around. She keeps talking about a ceremony, Deepa said. This has something to do with Seema, doesn't it? You were right the whole time. She took her all those years ago, just like she took my niece, Anjali said, placing a hand on her forehead, like she was dealing with a dreadful migraine. I know how to find her. She told me, Deepa said. Anjali looked at her with a horrified expression. But first we must go somewhere and convince someone to come along, Deepa said. In the corner of the painting on the wall, a tiny new painted figure appeared, barely noticeable to the casual observer. A figure dressed in red, standing underneath the golden orange and green foliage. Its face was half beautiful and half rotten, and it featured a look of delirious joy. Electrical engineer Sudeep Chakrabarty's funeral was a somber affair. The soundtrack to this grey, cloudy day was the sound of his pyre burning and the occasional harsh caws of crows. Komal, her brother and her mother were joined by hundreds of other mourners in the cemetery to farewell a beloved father, friend and colleague. As Komal wept, She tried to suppress the feelings of guilt that rose in her. While she didn't remember exactly what happened that night, she knew in her soul that she was partially responsible for her father's plight. Also, she was starting to remember the face of the horrid woman who wanted to welcome her into her cold embrace. "I'm sorry, Papa," she said tearfully. She was not the only one shedding tears while gazing at the burning pyre. She felt mildly consoled by the outpouring of grief from her father's passing, by friends and even strangers. Her father was an amazing man, and soon he would be nothing but a pile of ash. As she scanned the crowd, her eyes suddenly fell on the horrid apparition from that tragic night. She wiped her tears, thinking that her blurred vision was making her see things that did not exist. But she was wrong. Standing opposite to her was the Lal Chudale, dressed in red, half of her face rotting away and covered in maggots and flies feeding off her decaying eyeball. The other half of her face graced a beatific smile. Komal drew the attention of her mother and others standing nearby to the dreadful vision. "Do you see her? The monster! She's right there!" But her mother and the mourners dismissed her comments and returned to the business of grieving. The truth dawned on her like a cold winter morning chill. The others couldn't see what she was witnessing. Beads of sweat formed on her forehead, and she struggled to breathe. It was like someone had stuck a cork in her throat. The Lal Chudale's smile grew wider. She raised her hand and pointed at someone. Komal looked in that direction. The evil incarnate was pointing at her innocent brother. Her intentions were clear. If Komal didn't go with her, her brother would be the next one to meet with a dreadful accident. Komal looked around at the grieving throng of humanity. Then she looked at her weeping family. This can't happen again. Not to the ones she loved. The Lal Chudale nodded. Komal, undetected by her wailing mother, slipped away, squeezed through the sea of mourners and walked towards the cemetery gates, where the woman in red waited patiently. "What does work think about you going ghost hunting with your junkie friend?" Deepa asked with a smile. Her sense of humor had clearly survived the hospital stay. Anjali, who was driving, returned the smile. "I have taken a month's leave," she said. "In the middle of a busy investigation?" Deepa asked. Anjali sighed. "Okay, if it makes you happy, here's the truth. I was forced to take leave, and they have assigned someone else to the case." "I'm sorry," Deepa said. To get to their destination, they had to travel for an hour and a half on a long stretch of winding road through a forest aptly named Narakaranya. "The ocean of trees on both sides look endless," Deepa said, looking out of the window. "Yeah, the place has always given me the creeps, which is why I looked concerned when you told me where we had to go," Anjali said. Do you think this man, Dhruman Baba, will come with us? I mean, firstly, will he even believe our story? Anjali asked. I hope so. The Lal Chudel showed me where to go find her, but she said it was essential that we bring Dhruman Baba along with us. Deepa said. Well, if he doesn't come, we will have to go find that bitch ourselves, Anjali said, patting the knife sheath attached to her belt. Deepa looked at the weapon with concern. What? I can't take my service revolver, so I thought this would be the next best thing. You think we can defeat her? Deepa said. We will have to try, and hopefully this Dhruman Baba can help us, Anjali said. Deepa grabbed her backpack from the back seat. She opened the bag, exposing its contents. I have also come prepared, just in case, she said. Anjali had a quick peek in and saw across some cloves of garlic and what looked like holy water. I want to laugh, but I am not going to. And also, I am not going to ask you where you stole those from, Anjali said. Don't, Deepa responded. We might not survive this, but by God we will not go down without a fight, Anjali said. What if we have to sacrifice ourselves for your niece? Deepa asked, closing the bag up and returning it to the back seat. Then I will do it without a second's hesitation. But I can't ask you to do the same. It is up to you, Anjali said. We might not have a choice, Deepa said. Anjali sighed. But I want you to know that I will sacrifice myself if it meant we could save lives, Deepa said. I would do that for a friend. She continued. Do you remember the time when I protected you from those bullies in the schoolyard? Chamanlal's daughter and her gang of mean girls. My ribs still hurt thinking about it, Anjali said. You were always more than a friend to me. You were like a sister, Deepa said. Stop, Deepa. I'm not comfortable with this conversation, Anjali said. They drove in silence for a few more miles before they came upon the bridge over the river Kanti. As they drove over the bridge, their attention was drawn to the sprawling slum of Karipur. It clung to the banks of the river like a cancerous growth. A dismal diorama made up of crumbling mud huts and asbestos sheets black as coal and rotting palm leaves. The soil and the air in this god-forsaken place reeked of despair. They drove on for 2 miles and turned right into a road that cut through a forested area. An enormous man with a bald head, a handlebar moustache and a machete hanging from his belt stood in the middle of the road chewing pan. He waved them down and tapped on the car's window. Anjali rolled down the window. He inquired, What business do you have in these parts? For a second, Anjali considered throwing the weight of her badge around. But this man was here to keep out people who might be considered interlopers. People who did not look favorably upon those who traded their supernatural wares. We are here to see Dhruman Baba about a demon that kidnapped my niece, Anjali said with a straight face. There was no other way to explain it. I've heard far worse, ladies, the man said. Not to be insensitive or anything, he added, when he saw the disapproving look on the faces of both the women. He straightened up and waved them on. That was interesting, Deepa said, as they drove down the path, the tires crunching the gravel and disturbing the peace of the surrounding woods. The road ended in front of a large rock outcrop carved out by human hands to create shallow caves. They could both see the faint glow of lamps from within some of the caves. Anjali parked the car under an enormous tree covered in creepers. You ready for this? Anjali asked. Yes, Deepa said, with trepidation in her voice. Deepa and Anjali shared storytelling duties as they briefed Dhruman Baba about their history with the Lalchadale, starting with Seema's disappearance all the way to the tragedy that befell Anjali's niece. An enormous man with a grey beard that nearly touched the floor and dreadlocks that fell off his shoulder like snakes, Dhruman Baba was dressed in black. Ash and red kumkum powder decorated his worried face. He listened to the two women as he drank herbal tea. The lamps that barely lit the cave heightened the impact of the history of terror they were narrating. In my vision, my parents transformed into the Lalchadale. She told me where Anjali and I could find her, provided we bring you along with us, Deepa said. Dhruman Baba took a long sip and then placed his clay tumbler next to him. He let out a deep sigh. Is she known to you? Anjali asked. Dhruman Baba looked at both women with sad eyes. You knew her before she became Lalchadale, didn't you? Anjali said. I cannot help you, Dhruman Baba said. I have to come clean. I am a police officer investigating the case of disappearing teenage girls in Indraprastha city. Lives are at stake here, Baba. We know you are a great practitioner of occult magic. At least that's what everyone we asked around told us. Where badge and gun and forensic tech has failed, your magic might succeed. So please don't refuse us help. I beg you, Anjali said. Please, Baba. My life has become a waking nightmare because of this demon. Help me find an end to this. We cannot defeat her without you, Deepa begged with folded hands. No, I can't, Baba said. You can't or you won't? Anjali said angrily. Deepa fell to the ground and touched his feet. Baba was unmoved. Get up, Deepa. This man will not help us, Anjali said, pulling Deepa up to her feet. Baba looked away, but he could still feel the angry gaze of the women burn into his flesh. We will try to save them by ourselves. But without you by our side, our chances are slim. We hoped a learned man like you would listen to our pleas. But it looks like you are more interested in hiding in your cave. You may have just signed off on our death warrants. Come on, Deepa, Anjali said. Baba watched the women storm off angrily. He let their footsteps fade away before he stood up. Baba walked to the entrance of the cave and gazed outside at the trees gently swaying in the forest breeze. He knew the identity of the Lalchadale, and he was cognizant of the destruction she was unleashing on the mortal plane. Like a parent beholden to the love of his problem child, he agonized over it, every sleepless night. His mind raced to a conversation he had many years ago in the same cave. A conversation he had with a young man named Prakash and his dear friend, the occultist, Ekta ji. "This is the sun you talk of," he said, looking at Prakash. Ekta turned around and smiled at Prakash. Prakash said namaste and nodded. "Your father approached one of my students to awaken the Dagin. He gave her a bundle of money, which he claimed was his life savings, and begged for the vilest of dark souls that we had harvested from the innards of Narakaranya." Baba drank a white liquid from a brass pot, and it spilled from his lips and cascaded down his beard. Dhruman Baba didn't bother to wipe it. "The forest?" Prakash asked. "The forest is a strange place. People travel in there to commit suicide. Sometimes the mob bury their hapless victims in there. Restless and vengeful spirits wander its dark shadows. We harvest them to enhance our powers, to do our bidding. It is mostly harmless." "I'm sorry, but I can't see what is harmless about that," Prakash said. "I don't expect you to understand." Baba scoffed. Prakash shifted uncomfortably. "Sometimes the forest spits out something so evil that it should never be harnessed for its powers. Unfortunately, my student did the exact thing that I had warned her not to engage in. She awakened the Dagin to satisfy her greed for the money your father threw at her, and send it your way." Ekta sighed. Rudra Devi prided herself on being Dhruman Baba's favorite student. She excelled at grasping his lessons on mantras and tantric rites that could manifest dark energies from the world of the dead and bring forth useful knowledge to share with the living, sold to the living for a good price. She had lived in poverty in Karipur slum. As a young girl, she sold corn and plastic toys at the local markets. And when that stopped bringing in the income, she sold her body to strangers. Rudra would have killed herself a long time ago if all she saw was the darkness in her life and in the people she engaged with. But what saved her was her ability to see beyond, see through the veil of darkness to the other side. All she needed was someone to guide her, and Dhruman Baba proved not just to be an excellent teacher, but also a savior. Finally, she had knowledge and power, and most importantly, hope. What would have taken students 3 decades, she learned in 3 years. Her abilities were so powerful that she had Dhruman Baba's blessings to harvest spirits and use them to benefit her trade. "Never use your powers to harm anyone. Never use it to satiate your greed," he used to say. "By all means, make a living, but don't get mesmerized by the color of money. Don't forget our creed." She had harvested many souls over the years, rotting suicide victims hanging on trees in the forest, withering bodies unearthed from shallow graves the mob had dug. But one day, she came upon a man who was digging a grave in the depths of Narakaranya. An old woman he had no doubt carried in from the slum lay near him on a bed of dried leaves. She lay underneath a tree, dressed in black, milky white eyes wide open, with a look of hatred so intense it made her seem alive. The middle-aged man in a tattered vest and dhoti stopped digging when he saw Rudra Devi. He dropped the shovel and joined his hands in reverence. The people who lived in the slum revered the dark magic practitioners of Naragaranya forest, especially Dhruman Baba and his students. The man saw Rudra Devi stare at his dead mother. She was my mother, this vile woman. That hatred you see on her face was her constant companion. She felt disgust for life and love, detested us children, her own granddaughters, our friends. She would inflict pain on innocent creatures to seek pleasure. My mother, this vile woman. I didn't want her buried anywhere near my home, the man said. How did she die? Rudra Devi asked. The man hesitated. From old age? Rudra Devi did not believe him. She looked at the blue tinge on the dead woman's lips. It was not unusual in the slum to feed old people milk laced with yellow oleander juice to get rid of them when they became a burden. How much do you want for her? She inquired. What? The man asked. For not burying her, for parting with her body, she said. No, He nervously looked at his feet. I have to give you some consideration in return for your permission to perform rites on your mother's body. Whatever you like, Tantrika, he said after considering her offer. Here, she said, extending a black thread. It will enhance your virility even into your old age. Blessed by the great Baba. The man accepted the blessings happily. He looked at his mother and then back at Rudra. You may go now. I will look after her, she said. The man put the sacred thread into his shirt pocket and walked away, the shovel resting on his right shoulder. Rudra bound the old woman with a rope against a tree. As the body rotted in the forest's heat, Rudra Devi, who had created a yantra on the ground with chalk powder, chanted powerful mantras. The rituals went on for 7 days and 7 nights. A deadly rage emanated from the spirit. She had never felt such hatred from a subject before. It was not unusual for spirits to be angry during the harvesting process. But this was something else. But Rudra was confident in her training, and she persisted through the difficult phases of the ceremony. Finally, she drew the old woman's soul into a steel nail covered in red kunguma powder and hammered it into the tree that was the abode of her decaying form. Once Rudra completed the rites, she returned to Baba, boasted to him about her successful harvest. She was so proud of what she had accomplished, and she couldn't wait for someone to come looking for her services, for something truly special, something that demanded higher than usual rates. A big bundle of notes thrown at her feet, demanding she unleashes the spiteful soul on some hapless victim. Baba's ethos had served him well, but she was not obliged to embrace his creed. Where was right and wrong when her father made her eat grass because they ran out of food? When she was hit like a fucking dog by her mother for failing to sell enough corn? When diseased truck drivers ravished her soul without mercy? I see darkness in you, Baba used to say. Remember my teachings. Do not succumb to temptation, child. But when a disgraced school teacher and a child molester from the nearby slum threw a large cloth bundle full of notes at her feet, Rudra Devi silenced the better angels of her nature. The man had the nervous energy of an animal who was being hunted. Dark circles around his bloodshot eyes, unkempt hair, filthy clothes. "I want revenge," he said. "I want the woman who wrecked my life to suffer." "It will cost you more than a bundle of money," Rudradevi said. "Take it. It is a lot of money. It is all of my life's savings," he said. "More," Rudradevi said. "Anything," the man said, falling on her feet. "Anything." On the day of the ceremony, she pulled out the nail from the tree. The old woman's body was now merely a dry husk. Rudra hammered the nail into a featureless doll made from black cloth and stuffing from old mattresses. "You must have this on you when you do the deed," she said, extending the doll to the man. "Yes," the man said, smiling crazily. "Thank you." She watched him walk excitedly to his death. Somewhere a noose was waiting for the man, a rope that would end his life and awaken the Dakin. "What happened to your student?" Prakash asked, after taking a few moments to process what he had just finished hearing about his father. The air in the cave seemed stale. The lamps dimmed, as if the life had been sucked out of their blue hearts. Ekta ji shifted uncomfortably as Dhruman Baba began. "After your father's death, Rudra came to me, complaining about visions, about someone following her. She looked frail and distraught. She wasn't clear about who or what it was. I tried to help, but she declined my advice and said she knew what to do. One Sunday, dressed in ceremonial red, she walked into that forest to perform rites that would banish her tormentor. But she never came back." It was late afternoon now, but you couldn't tell because of the oppressive shadows in the cave. This abode of magic was the domain of the creatures of the night. The wind picked up outside and howled through the entrance. Dhruman Baba continued. "Her people in the slum say they have seen her, a gnarled, disfigured creature haunting the woods, looking for hapless souls to feed her eternal hunger. They call her Lal Chudel," Ekta offered. "I have heard the stories." "I don't think that's her," Dhruman Baba said. "I believe in my heart that she's gone." "Maybe that is what you would like to believe," Ekta said. Dhruman Baba smiled sadly. A small tear travelled down from the corner of his left eye. The Dakin was haunting Rudra Devi day and night, manifesting in dark corners of every room that she entered, shuffling behind her in the shadows when she made trips to places of worship or to the homes of clients, breathing on her face when she slept. The vile spirit was making a statement. I'm always around. I can get to you when I want, where I want. No spirit Rudradevi had manifested for a client from the Naragaranya forest had returned to haunt her prior to this. As days passed, she grew discouraged by the ineffectiveness of the spiritual barriers she had set up around her and the failure of the tantric rituals she had conducted to banish the entity. Any sense of hope she had about vanquishing the entity to the netherworld was severely diminished by her teacher Dhruman Baba's refusal to help her access mantras from the Atharva Veda. His excuse? It could only be wielded by sadhus who had dedicated decades to its study. It made her question how much her teacher, the great sadhu Dhruman Baba, knew of her talents, of her unlimited potential. If only she could find a guiding hand that was braver than her teacher. Or, should she say, ex-teacher. Given the circumstances, it was important that she dealt with the Dakin immediately. It was time to conduct the Mahavidya Tantra ceremony, a dangerous tantric ritual that would call upon all her skills and immense mental fortitude. If she got it wrong, well, she couldn't afford to get it wrong. Presently, Rudradevi was returning on the train from Kharagpur. She had visited the town to acquire special supplies made with snake essence key to facilitate the Mahavidya ceremony. The midweek train was not surprisingly mostly empty. Most people had gone to their villages for an extended break during Diwali holidays. Dressed in a red sari, her face adorned in red and white ash, Rudradevi was a striking figure set against the peeling blue paint that covered the interior of the train. Occasionally, people traveling through the cabin paid their respects to her. Some even placed notes or coins at her feet. One look at her, and they knew they were in the presence of a great yogini. Rudradevi kept her eyes closed, meditating, recalling the mantras from Atharva Veda that were a part of the upcoming ritual. The exact steps of the ritual were noted only in very few commentaries of the Atharva Veda for a good reason. One wrong step, one poorly uttered mantra, one lapse of concentration, and you would soon find yourself in a dimension that was neither heaven, nor hell, nor earth. A place that morphed the living into something worse. The Vishnu Purana talks of this place as the dark zone in the depths of the cosmic water underneath the mortal world, just above the infernal endless pits of Naraga. A noise disturbed Rudradevi's concentration. It was unnatural enough to warrant investigation, so she opened her eyes. There was no one in the cabin with her. Outside, the world rushed past in a blur. A wet, squelchy sound drew her attention to the roof, where a long, snaking wall of filthy water had begun to form. It thickened with every passing minute, transforming slowly into a filthy dough-like substance covered in human feces and the tiny teeth of children. Rudradevi stood up. She tracked the growth above her. She then removed a pouch full of sacred ash from her hip, grabbed a handful of it, and threw it at the strange organic growth on the roof of the train. The small fans in the compartment spread the fine powder everywhere. A fog comprised of the sacred ash soon enveloped the interior, severely limiting the visibility. "Another one of your tricks, you wretched creature," Rudradevi said. On the opposite side of the compartment, Barely visible through the powdery cloud was a shadow. It walked towards Rudradevi, slowly at first. Then it picked up speed as it mouthed vile demonic passages. Rudradevi chanted mantras that had previously helped her ward off evil entities, but the figure ran straight for her. Rudradevi walked back to what she thought was the walkway between the compartments as she continued to target her pursuer with chants. The cloud started dispersing, revealing an empty carriage. "I have won," Rudra thought. All she could hear was the beating of her heart and the sound of the train racing on the tracks. No sign of the grunting abomination. Even the strange growth on the roof of the train had disappeared. The Dagon materialized in front of her in an instant. Rudradevi moved back in shock, only to realize that she was in fact standing right in front of the open door of the train. Only her quick reflexes saved her as she grabbed onto the railing on the outside of the train and anchored her right foot on the floor of the train. The left side of her body was dangling outside the train, dangerously exposed to the rail infrastructure built on the sides of the track. Presently, her eyes fell on a wooden post that was rushing at her body with breakneck speed. With a mighty tug, she pulled herself back into the train. She fell to the floor on her limbs, panting. It felt like her heart was beating out of her chest. She felt exhausted by the adrenaline rush and the frightening nature of the experience. She focused on the here and now. The filthy floor of the train, the tiny fans, the peeling paint, the danger exit signboard with a missing T. When she felt ready to stand on her feet, she stood up and looked at the empty carriage. "You demonic bitch, I will drag you to hell tonight," she said.
This podcast is supported by The Real Real. Meet Christine. She loves shopping. And this is the sound of fashion overload. Too many fabulous things, not enough space. So Christine started selling with The Real Real.
I've always loved collecting designer pieces. Gucci bags, Prada heels. But my style keeps evolving. Selling with The Real Real? Game changer. I earn more, and they do everything.
Seriously, just drop off your items or schedule a pickup. We handle the photos, descriptions, pricing, even shipping. You just sit back and watch your items sell fast to our 40 million members.
And I get peace of mind knowing I earn more selling with The Real Real than anywhere else.
Exactly. That's the sound of your closet working for you. The Real Real. Earn more, save time, sell fast. And right now, you can get an extra $100 to shop when you sell for the first time. Go to therealreal.com to get your extra $100. Therealreal.com. That's therealreal.com.
Over the months, she had repurposed one of the caverns in the ancient cave system under the Naragaranya forest to create an abode for her occult practices. Every Tantrika deserved her own occult den. Every yogini needed a spiritual home. The vast space reserved for rituals now featured a yantra drawn using yellow sandalwood paste. A fire pit to facilitate the puja sat at the very center of the interlinked triangles of the divine illustration. The Mahavidya yantra could open the portals to Naraga, so it was important to safeguard the mortal plane from its clutches using lilies laced with ash produced from the charred remains of parrots. Rudra Devi chanted mantras as she poured snake key into the fire. I will you to present your cursed form, O vile Darkin. Come forth, reveal yourself to the majesty of the Mahavidya Yantra, she said. Occasionally, she threw ash blessed by the priests of 108 Devi temples into the fire to increase the potency of the ritual. Rudra Devi's voice reverberated through the usually quiet chambers of the cave system, and waves of muted light cut through the darkness of the underground complex. The Dargin appeared above the fire pit, crying in pain, bound by an invisible force.
Let me go, you fucking bitch, she said.
Weeks and weeks of hard work had paid off. Rudra's diligent preparation and her proficiency in chanting the mantras were bearing fruit.
Let me go, you wretch,
the Dargin said as she struggled and squirmed. She was now levitating on top of the flames. I have you now, evil spectre, Rudra Devi said haughtily. She chanted the Mula mantra that opened the portal underneath the fire pit. What was once the hard stone floor of the cave transformed into a pitch-black pool. Strange shapes bubbled forth from its depths, including what looked like fingers coated in black tar. Strange muffled screams could be heard from within. Even the whiff of the horrors of Naraka was enough to strike fear in Rudra Devi's heart. You messed with the wrong person, Dargin, Rudra said arrogantly as she drew words from the Mula mantra in the air with her fingers, while reciting them, to dispatch the Dargin to the depths of Naraka.
You sure about that, Tantrika?
The Dargin said with a big smile as she slowly descended to the ground. The black gooey substance climbed up into the fire pit and devoured the flame. That was the first indication that something was not quite right. That's not supposed to happen, Rudra Devi thought.
You must always learn to walk fast before you run,
the Dargin said, looking at Rudra Devi's feet. Rudra looked down at her feet. She was horrified to find that the darkness was now swirling around her feet and rising, threatening to devour her. No, no, she said. The Darkin started glowing from within, like there was a lamp increasing in brightness underneath her decaying flesh. The light grew brighter, swallowing the form of the demon.
I have you now, Tantrika. I will enjoy your screams from the netherworld,
she said as she slowly disappeared from view. No, Rudra Devi screamed. Rudra Devi was now being dragged into the depths by a force similar to a riptide in the ocean. She chanted all the protective mantras she knew, prayed to Varaha, the boar-headed god who presided over the body of knowledge in the darker texts of the Vedas. The toxic sludge now covered one half of her body, including her face. Then, one of the mantras she chanted in desperation yanked her out of the deadly pool and threw her against the walls of the cave. Her conscious mind faded. It disappeared into a warp that existed in the world between worlds. When she woke up after several weeks, she felt neither like a human nor like a spirit. A hunger that could never be satiated had tunneled deep into her soul. That and a deep sorrow that threatened to break into uncontrollable rage. She stood up slowly. Her young body felt like it had aged 100 years, and a painful stinging sensation racked one side of it. The cave was poorly lit, and foreboding as ever, but strangely, now she could see in the dark. Rudradevi touched her face. It felt like the two halves had different textures. She decided to investigate. She pulled out a small ceremonial mirror from one of her cloth sacks on the floor, and she gazed into it. Her cries of sadness and self-pity turned into cries of rage. Her form seemed to vanish and reappear every few seconds, and she realized she was trapped in a purgatory from where she could only occasionally escape to the earthly plane. In time, her form would be completely lost to that other dimension. She needed to use the time she had left wisely, to learn, to perform rituals, to salvage her original form. There were dark and dangerous methods hidden in the pages of the Atharva Veda that could help her return to her corporeal form. But they demanded human sacrifices, especially the extraction of organs from young girls who were strong of spirit, the feisty ones. Desperate times called for desperate measures. Nothing mattered more than her personal quest to become Rudradevi again and fulfill her potential. She looked back at the mirror and studied the grotesque form in front of her eyes. For now, she would have to contend with being the Lalchadale, and in this form, she would hunt. Komal woke up in a cave to the sounds of a girl screaming. On the walls of the cave were cocoons made of yellow sacred thread, in which teenage girls like her were tightly bound, with only their faces exposed to facilitate breathing. Komal spotted at least 10. Some of the cocoons were cut open in places, and those spots were caked with dried blood. The faces of the girls in those cocoons were pale and cold and very dead. Their eyes were open, and their pupils were grey as storm clouds. Movement was slowly returning to Komal's body, but she could not yet scream, nor get up off the cold, rocky surface of the cave. To her right was a cauldron that was bubbling away on top of a fire pit, which was nestled in the middle of a yantra drawing. To her left was the Lalchadale, using her knife to cut open a cocoon which shook and pitched around violently. The Lalchadale was cutting open a big square section, while the helpless and very much alive girl screamed for help and her parents. Then, as Komal watched on in horror, the demon cut open the poor girl's chest, pried apart her ribs with the tip of the knife, and reached in to yank out her beating heart. The girl's screams were silenced. The Lalchadale gently patted the dead girl's cheek affectionately. Then she lifted the heart up to her eyes. Komal could see that it was still beating.
Perfect,
the Lalchadale said. She cradled it in both her palms, walked up to the cauldron as she chanted mantras. Then she dropped it into the boiling liquid. Komal could now scream, and she let the full force of her terror bounce against the walls of the cave. The Lalchadale looked at her in surprise.
You are awake now, you sleeping beauty. Good.
She rushed to a darkened corner of the cave. Komal could hear her search through a stash of items. Komal tried to get up, to escape, but she could only wiggle her fingers and toes. Getting there, she said. Come on, come on. Komal encouraged her body to wake up. The Lalchadale emerged from the shadows grinning. In her hand was a giant spool of yellow sacred thread.
It's time for your pitiful mortal body to be elevated to an offering,
the demon said. Komal screamed again.
Shh! Hush, little girl. Your great contribution to my ceremony will be your beautiful liver. Rejoice, do not be afraid, for you will be assimilated into the grace of the mighty Varaha,
the Lalchadale said. The great source of bravery that had willed her into making a sacrifice for her family had now depleted, and Komal felt absolute terror. She didn't want to find out what was in store for her. She wanted to get back to her family. Movement returned to her legs and her arms. Komal sat up urgently.
I see that my mantra's effectiveness is wearing off. I need you to be still when I am wrapping you up like a present to the dark gods,
the Lalchadale said. The Lalchadale approached her with a smile. She wrapped a strand of the thread around her filthy finger as she took each step towards Komal, slowly and deliberately. A predator, self-assured in the knowledge that the prey was already as good as dead. The demon was clearly relishing the thrill of the hunt. Komal scrambled back for some distance on her hand and feet, but Lalchadale picked up her speed as well. God, please God, save me, Komal said. Komal's eyes fell on the dead girls hanging from their yellow tombs on the walls of the cave. She didn't want to be yet another trophy for this demented, vile being.
Like a spider spinning its web,
the Lalchadale said, playing with the thread. Suddenly, a series of minor explosions of light surrounded the Lalchadale. It looked like small lightning strikes smothered by dark clouds. The Lalchadale was stunned by the frequency and the ferocity of the blasts surrounding her. She tried to swat it off like it was a fly. Komal used the distraction provided by this unexpected event to run out of the cavern. She turned back once or twice to find the Lalchadale struggling to conquer the magical assault unleashed on her being. She could hear her shout out mantras in strange tongues. Oh God, please keep her occupied till I find my way out of here, Komal said. Komal ran from one dimly lit cavern to another, all interlinked by narrow tunnels. On the walls, she saw rock paintings as old as time itself. A giant with horns tearing apart human bodies to decorate what looked like his palace. What was this place? Komal said to herself. She didn't remember being brought here by the Lalchadale. She met the demon at the gates of the cemetery. A portal opened, and then her mind had gone blank. Komal felt like she was running in circles. Where was the exit out of this wretched space? She thought. Her attention was drawn to the sound of something chasing her through the tunnels. She realized that the Lalchadale was going to be here any given second. The lactic acid that had built up in her legs slowed her considerably, and she was struggling for breath. Komal had to stop and face her terrible fate. The last ounce of courage in her was snuffed out. She gave up and turned around to face the vile demon who had stopped running and was walking towards her determinedly.
A minor hiccup, then.
God knows what that little magic show was.
I will soon find out the source of that trick after I cut out your liver,
the Lalchadale said. Her grin widened. One half of her face was beautiful and the other representative of all things hellish on earth. Suddenly, a portal opened up between them. Komal was pulled through it by the hands of an elderly but strong man. Komal found herself outside the cave on the forest floor, surrounded by the vile foliage of the Naragaranya forest. Dhruman Baba fell from his meditation stool, exhausted, his life energy drained and his spiritual powers diminished. It would take him a few days of rest to recover his physical and spiritual vitality. But he didn't regret it. He might have saved the life of a poor girl from the clutches of his former student. He needed rest. He needed to regain his strength. A greater battle lay ahead, and he expected the heralds of that confrontation to visit him in the next few days. Their stinging final words had made him act for the sake of the young girl. He was coming to terms with his mistakes, and he knew he would be called upon to do more. After exiting Dhruman Baba's ashram in the middle of Naragaranya forest, both Anjali and Deepa walked deeper into the wilderness. Deepa was following the intuitive knowledge granted to her by the Lalchadale in a vision. A journey that would take her to their mortal enemy's doorstep. Anjali followed Deepa with a mixture of trepidation and hope. Sure, it was a downer that they would not have assistance from the great Dhruman Baba. But maybe, just maybe, she could combine forces with Deepa, use the tools they had at their disposal to save her niece and the other girls. There were pressing questions like, would the holy water and a crucifix work against the spirits? Would the Lalchadale even appear, given that they had not fulfilled their part of the bargain, by not bringing the Baba along with them. Questions, doubts, fears, hope. They filled the silences between Anjali and Deepa. The forest grew darker, even though it was late afternoon and the sunlight was streaming through the leaves of tall, ancient trees. They thought they saw shadowy forms lurking in the lush foliage, spying on their every step. They thought they heard the cries of strange infernal creatures and the muffled screams of the tortured in the distance. Narakaranya truly was the entrance to hell. The silence between them was broken by a query from Deepa. I know you're not comfortable speaking about your child, but I just wanted to know, is she okay? What made you think I would be comfortable talking about it now? Anjali said. We could die today. Do you mind opening up to your friend at least once? Deepa said. Friend? Anjali scoffed. You? Deepa started angrily, but her conversation was halted by the sight of a disheveled figure emerging from the forest ahead. A girl, shambling forward like the shadow of something that was once alive. The dark, shadowy creatures in the foliage around them began whispering, faster, louder. Anjali, who had just mocked Deepa for calling her a friend, grabbed onto her hand. Deepa glanced at their hands clasped together. What battles are you fighting in your soul, my friend? Deepa thought. Memories cascaded out from treasure boxes, where they lay dormant for decades. Deepa was certain that they could both sense it. They didn't know what vile monstrosity was headed their way. They didn't know what it was capable of. Here, at the cusp of their impending doom, they remembered the special bond they once had. Deepa was convinced they would never get a chance to cherish it, that it would rot with their bodies and leach into the soil of this wretched place. They both gazed at the approaching form in terror. Anjali took the initiative to pull out a crucifix with a stake at the end of it. She handed over the bottle of holy water to Deepa. It was not the Lalchadale, or a demon conjured by her. It was a teenage girl, tired and gaunt, with parched lips and matted hair. The teenager lifted up her mournful face and tried to mouth words. Her voice came out as grunts. Then she fell into Deepa's arms. Darling, what's your name? Anjali asked, shaking her. She did this several times before she got a feeble response. Komal. Deepa and Anjali looked at each other in shock. Deepa paced around her motel room anxiously. Anjali had booked the place for her in the outskirts of the city and had asked her to stay put in the place for a while. It had been 2 weeks since they discovered Komal in the Narakaranya forest, and their emergency call for an ambulance and the police force had resulted in a large operation where a significant portion of the Narakaranya forest was searched for signs of a cave described by both Komal and Deepa. Anjali and Deepa even took the police to the cave system that claimed Seema's life years ago. The dogs and the electronic scanners and the specialist cave explorers found nothing. But the search continued, and Deepa was tired of waiting. She grew anxious by the second. What if they didn't find any evidence? What if more hours of Anjali's time was taken up by the investigation? No. she said, wringing her hands. She looked in the mirror and saw a hungry person. Hungry, not for food. Her veins throbbed and ached. If only. A thought that began with 2 little words. She lay on the bed and pressed her face into the mattress and screamed, "No." But desire crawled up her back like an army of ants marching to feast on a dead carcass. It was too much to take. She tried ringing Anjali, but she was not answering her phone. They would find nothing of the Lal Chudale. The whole thing would be rubbished as fantasies of a junkie. Komal would be tagged as a victim of an abduction gone wrong, PTSD and shock causing her to invent stories of a witch that kidnapped teenagers and ate their hearts. Deepa could hear her heartbeat growing louder. A new awareness descended on her. Anjali would leave her again, like she always did. A voice said in her head, "You have no one. Your parents didn't want you. Even your not friend doesn't want you." Deepa picked up her phone and found the number of a dealer. The dealer answered and asked for a password. Deepa gave it to her. "What are you after?" the dealer asked. "Everything you got," Deepa said. While she had not been reinstated into her role as a senior detective, Anjali was still enjoying offering her assistance to the investigation as a consultant. The new senior detective, Balraj Thani, was a 30-year-old veteran. He was thorough, daring, and considerate of the opinions that others brought to the table. Every logical opinion, that is. The supernatural theories on the table are not under consideration, Detective Anjali, he said in a matter-of-fact voice. Anjali was disappointed, but she was not going to refuse the force's help in searching parts of the forest that were not explored previously. The more eyes, the better. Every bit of effort in looking for the girls helped. But 2 weeks had passed. Given the failures of the police, Anjali felt that it was time to get back with Deepa, to devise a new strategy. She picked up her phone to call Deepa and saw at least 20 missed calls on there. Anjali was immersed in her work and the phone was on silent, so she hadn't noticed it. Something was wrong. Anjali tried to call Deepa, but there was no answer. She jumped in her car and drove to the motel she had organized for Deepa's lodgings. She ran up the stairs to the room, which was on the 2nd floor. She knocked on the door several times, but there was no answer. She looked in through the window. Through a small gap in the curtain, she saw Deepa surrounded by blue plastic packets and at least a dozen pills. Deepa was injecting a needle into her left arm. "No," Anjali said. She started kicking the door in. Deepa was not going to survive another overdose.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first stepfather, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
There was a nervous energy in the air as Deepa and Anjali prepared to enter Dhruman Baba's cave. Fingerlings of tree roots decorated the mossy surface of the rock face, and the sounds of bells and chanting echoed out of the passageway that led to the inner sanctum. "What makes you sure he will help us this time round?" Deepa asked. "Just like we trusted your intuition to guide us through the Narakaranya forest, I am choosing to trust my feelings on this matter," Anjali responded. A week ago, Anjali had kicked down the door to Deepa's motel room and prevented her from overdosing on a cocktail of deadly drugs. While looking after her in the hospital ward, Anjali had a lot of time to search and connect with her inner self. She could not censor the inner voice which repeatedly asked her to reach out to Dhruman Baba once again for help. And this time, she would need to ask more of him. "He will listen to us," Anjali said presently to a concerned-looking Deepa. Anjali placed a reassuring hand on her friend's shoulder. Anjali's belief was confirmed when Dhruman Baba greeted them as if he was expecting their visit. They joined him on the floor of the cave, underneath flaming golden lanterns that swayed gently. "Did you save Komal?" Anjali asked. Baba nodded. "Thank you, Babaji," Anjali said with folded hands. "Now I must ask you to save one more person." Deepa looked confused as Anjali placed a hand on her knee and said to the Baba, "I cannot defeat the Lal Chadel without my friend, and she is sick." "The worst kind of sickness, the sickness of the soul," Baba said, looking at Deepa with compassion. Deepa felt a tingling sensation in her chest. She was taken aback by the abruptness of this request, but also moved at the same time. That word Anjali used, friend. It exuded the warmth and love Anjali had shown towards her at the hospital as she nursed her back to health. "I will treat your friend, and I will help you both defeat my former student. Both tasks are not going to be easy, but it is preordained that I must perform this karma," Babaji said. Dhruman Baba shaped his fingers into a Yam Mudra and brought it up to his chest. He raised his eyes to the heavens and murmured quiet prayers. Then he said, "It is all her will. Jai Shiva Shakti." "There is a ritual which will appease my Kuladevata that may help draw out the poison of addiction from you," he said. "I will begin the preparations at once." Deepa was reclining on a giant slab of stone carved into a rectangular bed. She was surrounded by small clay lamps resting on a bed of marigold. The air smelled of incense and flowers. She was dressed in red robes and cradled a blue lotus in her hands. Dhruman Baba and his two assistants, adorned in saffron robes and rudraksha beads, walked around the sacred space, uttering cleansing prayers. Anjali sensed that Deepa was restless with nervous energy. "You will be fine," Anjali said. "I realized something today," Deepa said. "All those years we spent together as children and as young women, calling each other friends. We were never really there for each other. That word friend, it means so much more, yet we use it so casually. Would a friend have not called the Child Protection Unit when I opened up about the abuse I encountered in my home? Would a friend not have come and spent time with me to help me heal, instead of throwing money at the problem and hoping that it would go away? Deepa shook her head and continued, "And I was the same to you. I never bothered to ask you how you were, to find out what sorrows ate away at your heart, what made you anxious. I was too busy feeling sorry for myself and shooting up. I was not a friend to you either," Deepa said. "And yet here we are," Anjali responded. "Everything you said is true. But today is the culmination of a long journey we have made together and apart. Today I stand here ready to give up my life if it means my friend will be healed. Today, the bonds of our mateship will be made stronger." Tears flowed from Deepa's eyes in response to Anjali's statement. "My friend," she said. "There is one last thing," Anjali said. "I must tell you what happened to my daughter." Deepa wiped away her tears and gazed at Anjali with eyes that were eager for answers. Many years ago. "Ashwini, come for dinner," Anjali shouted out to her daughter, who was glued to the TV set watching Tom and Jerry. "Coming, Mummy," she responded. "This is your final call. No rasagullas for you if I have to shout your name one more time," Anjali said. "Come on, little monster." Anjali's husband joined in on the encouragement. This was a special Diwali for Anjali. In her very first year as an assistant detective in the narcotics squad, she had brought down the notorious Biluram gang, the biggest heroin traffickers on India's western seaboard. And the gold medal that she had been gifted a week ago in a stirring ceremony at the police headquarters sat glinting in her display cabinet in the living room. When little Ashwini finally joined them at the dinner table, her husband raised the glass of whiskey he had been nursing for an hour and said, "To the great Assistant Detective Anjali, for defeating evil and ensuring the triumph of light over darkness on this precious Diwali day." Ashwini, who looked cute in a blue frock with floral patterns, smiled and clapped excitedly. Anjali bowed like a performer to accept the adulation of her loving family. Then the gunfire began. It was in retaliation to my systematic dismantling of Biluram's gang. Obviously, I hadn't done a good job of cleaning up all of them, because they drove past my home and pumped bullets into my family as I watched on helplessly, Anjali said. Deepa, who was still reclining on the bed of rock, listened tearfully. Anjali continued, "My husband survived, but the marriage didn't. Because there was nothing left of my little Ashwini." Although Deepa could not physically touch Anjali, she reached out with her hand. Anjali did the same. Two women united in sorrow, two friends united in the face of personal tragedies. Baba and his assistants stopped their measured walk around Deepa. They rang their bells in unison. Then Baba grabbed a small lush neem tree branch from the floor. He blew smoke from an incense burner onto Deepa's body and used the branch to fan its coiling, writhing form. While the cleansing ritual was being performed on Deepa, Anjali reached within herself to restore her spirit. She was fighting along with Deepa to heal the poisonous wounds that had torn them apart and destroyed their lives. They were together in this fight. Dhruman Baba stepped across the bed of marigolds and placed a pill that tasted like tamarind onto Deepa's tongue. He then closed her eyelids, with a gentle stroke of his palm across her face and said, "Your greatest battle begins now, child." Deepa slipped into a deep trance, aided by the tablet Dhruman Baba had given her, the ceremonial chanting, the stroking of the neem branch across her body, and the heady scent of camphor. Suddenly, she was in a cave system, much like the one that claimed poor Seema's life. It was filled with the sounds of dripping water and the chirping of bats and the rustling of their restless wings. A new sound interrupted the ambience of the cave. The sound of two individuals shuffling across to greet Deepa. Her parents. Their forms had devolved into a strange and terrifying state, as if their bodies were made of wax. Their eyes were below their mouths. Their ears were on top of their misshapen heads. Deepa let out a scream. "You must confront your past." Dhruman Baba's voice reached out to her through a veil of another reality. Deepa pressed her eyes close as a movie reel of abuse played in her mind. Her father beating her with his belt. Her mother verbally abusing her for not topping the model exams or for having boyfriends. Her classmates from 9th grade cornering her in the girls' toilets and molesting her. And finally, the disgusting, stinking visage of a relative grunting as he raped her. Delightful images of syringes and colorful pills flooded her inner vision like fast-moving clouds. It beckoned her. It greeted her like an old friend and whispered sweet promises. "Fight it," Dhruman Baba said. "Say it," Anjali's voice encouraged her. "Say that you love yourself." Deepa opened her eyes. Her parents were now speaking in tongues and gesturing wildly at their bellies. They lifted up their tops and urged Deepa to watch on as strange shapes protruded and roiled in their bellies, denting the loose, wrinkled flesh. Deepa felt nauseated. Then their bellies tore open. Deepa's parents greeted these eruptions with shrieks and howls of delight. Two heads that resembled the Lalchadale emerged, covered in gore and shit and curd-like matter. Deepa screamed in horror and backed away into the comfortable arms of her addiction, eagerly waiting to embrace her. "Deepa, Deepa, fight it!" Dhruman Baba's voice again. "Love yourself, accept yourself," Anjali's voice said. "Fight it, fight it. Love yourself, love yourself. Conquer the self-loathing in your soul." The voices of Baba and Anjali mingled and echoed across the cave. Courage surged through Deepa's veins. Where there was self-hatred once, floral bouquets of love blossomed. "I will defeat you. I will be the master of my destiny," Deepa said. "I will save those girls from your clutches, you vile demon." The two heads that protruded from her parents' bellies poked out a filthy blue tongue coated in needles and crystals of psychedelic substances. "I reject you, demon. I reject you as I reject my own addiction," Deepa said, as she stepped forward and lashed out at the forms of her parents with wild punches and kicks. The putrid forms screamed in rage as the darkness swallowed them, and Deepa fell into this same darkness. It was a bottomless pit. She fell and she fell for what seemed like hours, and when she opened her eyes, she was back in Baba's ashram with her beloved friend Anjali, and she was healed. Dhruman Baba, Anjali and Deepa held hands as the saffron-clad assistants of the great sadhu chanted mantras from the Atharva Veda to open a portal to the abode of the Lalchadale. They didn't carry any weapons with them, because it was clear that the only remedy for the threat posed by the vile demon was Dhruman Baba's spiritual powers and his knowledge of dark magic. Above their heads, the fabric of reality tore open like a wound made on flesh. Bright light spilled forth from its innards. A blinding luminance, shaped like an oval petal, descended on them. It engulfed them in its warmth. Anjali and Deepa felt a tingling sensation, and the shifting caresses of a sunlight warm hand travel up and down their bodies. A small utterance of fear and excitement escaped their mouths in unison. There was a loud boom, and soon they found themselves standing on the rock floor of the cave. It will take a while to recover your strength after the transference, so take it easy, said a visibly tired Dhruman Baba. Any use of portal magic drained the travelers temporarily. This was more pronounced in the magic user who facilitated and sustained the phenomenon. So Anjali and Deepa knew that while they felt a bit off, the drain on the great sadhu's body would have been much greater. His capacity to conjure magical defenses was compromised for a brief period of time. Anjali and Deepa had to be careful and rely on each other's wits and support to deter any attacks from the Lalchadale. I tried to get us as close to her lair as possible, the Baba said, but she has concealed her location with magic. Anjali and Deepa gave each other a look of concern as they switched on their pen torches. We will head in that direction, Baba said, pointing to one of the tunnels that branched off from the junction. We are close. Anjali and Deepa propped the sadhu on their shoulders as they journeyed towards their destination. The cave was filled with the chittering of unearthly creatures and the occasional cackling of their enemy. She knows we are coming, Deepa said fearfully. This has been her empire of darkness for so long. We cannot sneak up on her, the Baba said. They walked through the cave, barely lit by the tiny torches. The occasional hellish screams that echoed through the caverns filled them with dread. Deepa's heart was beating out of her chest. Anjali's mouth was dry and her palms were sweaty. She was afraid she was going to drop her only source of light from her sweaty, shaky hands. Dhruman Baba chanted mantras that assisted in the revival of the body and the spirit. With each passing second, his strength returned. Deepa shined her light on the walls and discovered rock paintings, showing a giant with horns tearing apart human bodies to decorate what looked like his palace. To be more precise, a cathedral of mutilated horrors. What do these illustrations depict, Babaji? Anjali asked. The reason why Narakaranya is the portal to hell, Dhruman Baba offered. He refused to furnish further details on the matter. After what seemed like ages, the three warriors of light arrived at their destination. It was a giant cavern lit by the shifting flames of hundreds of tiny lamps. Ropes of dead tree roots hung from the ceiling, like skeletal hands seeking out their next victim. On the walls of the cave were cocoons made of yellow sacred thread in which teenage girls were tightly bound, with only their faces exposed to facilitate breathing. Some of the cocoons were cut open in places, and those spots were caked with dried blood. The faces of the girls in those cocoons were pale. Their eyes were open, and their pupils were grey as storm clouds. The whole place smelled of death and hopelessness. In the center of the space was a cauldron that was bubbling away on top of a fire pit, which was nestled in the middle of a yantra drawing. Deepa and Anjali rushed to the cocoons attached to the walls without any fear of Lalchadale or consideration for their own welfare. Baba scanned the surroundings, looking for his former student. "Nimisha? Nimisha!" Anjali called out for her niece. They poked and prodded and slapped at the yellow cocoons, hoping to elicit a response. "Please be alive. Please be alive," Anjali said repeatedly. They continued calling out to Nimisha. Then, a faint voice cut through the dreadful ambience of the cave and fell on their eager ears. "Auntie! Auntie!" Anjali scanned the wall furiously, looking for the source of the sound. "There she is!" Deepa shouted. Anjali was certain that her anxious tears had blurred her vision, causing her to miss the squirming figure. Deepa picked up a blood-coated knife that was placed on a plinth near the wall. The moment she picked it up, she knew it had been used to commit horrible mutilations, human sacrifice. She fought down the feeling of disgust and cut open the cocoon. Then she threw away the knife, wiping her hands furiously on her pants afterwards. An emaciated and weeping Nimisha fell out of it and into the arms of her auntie Anjali. Both of them hugged and cried. Deepa wrapped her arms around both of them briefly before turning back to rescue another girl who was feebly crying out for help. It was clear from her investigation that only 2 of the teenage girls, including Nimisha, were alive. The rest had been dead for days. Deepa covered her mouth in horror as she looked upon the cruel diorama on the wall. Young souls wrapped in yellow cocoons of death. The evil doings of that wretched witch. Where was she? Deepa thought. She scanned her surroundings. Not a sign of the demonic being. Oblivious to the danger they were in, Anjali and Nimisha hugged and wept. Their demonstrations of love even brought the usually stoic Baba to tears. The sound of a human clap and an evil laugh shattered the tender moment as the Lal Chudel emerged from a dark corner. What a triumph this is for poor Rudra Devi, her arch enemy, and the final essential ingredients for her ritual, all trapped in the web of fate. Parading in front of her eyes like luscious ripe fruits, ready for plucking, waiting to be devoured. The Lal Chudel rubbed her hands like an insect celebrating the entrapment of its delicious meal. The 2 rescued teenage girls huddled along with Anjali and Deepa and watched on in horror as the demon approached Dhruman Baba, arrogance shining in its eyes. Leave them alone. I know you hate me. Take my life and satisfy your need for revenge, Dhruman Baba said. But leave them alone. The Lal Chudel laughed raucously. The two younglings can go. But I need your friends, Deepa and Anjali, the vile creature said. The Lal Chudel moved away from Dhruman Baba and gazed at the bubbling cauldron. For years, I wondered why the Mahavidya ritual was not working. The sacred mouth of Varaha absorbed all the offerings I poured into its sizzling heart. Vital organs of young virgins. All the magic that I had learned from your school of Tantra. Yet, the Lal Chudel ran a hand over her face and said with a tinge of sadness in her voice, all I wanted was to be my old self again, and fate would deny me the same. The rituals prevented me from disappearing into the netherworld, but it never gave me the change I so eagerly desired. She twisted around inhumanly, first her head, then her torso, followed by her legs. She now faced her soon-to-be victims with hatred in her eyes. That is, till I saw these two many years ago as children, the Lal Chudel said, pointing at Deepa and Anjali. The day I dragged their poor little friend crying and screaming into my cave, where I bashed her head in and scooped out her brain. These two girls, linked by a deep love for each other that even they don't understand. A powerful connection exists between their souls. You see, that was the final ingredient needed to complete the Mahavidya ritual. The Lal Chudel cackled again, sending chills down their spines. The teenage girl screamed out in fear. Now, why don't you let the girls go so they can wander in the darkness and play in the shadows of the caves? I promise I will not touch them. In return, I want you to come experience my warm embrace. The Lal Chudel said with a smile as she beckoned Anjali and Deepa. The Lal Chudel now turned her attention to Dhruman Baba. And you will not do anything to stop me, because if you do, I will smite them where they stand, and their heads will roll onto your feet, dear former teacher. Baba stepped in between the fearful, trembling women and the demonic manifestation of his dear Rudra Devi. Rudra, I know you are in there. I know you think I failed you, the Baba said as he walked towards the Lal Chudel. I know you think I did not help you in your time of dire need. I did what I did out of love, but I now see the error of my ways. I should have been there for you, the Baba said as he embraced the demon. I am sorry. I am truly sorry that you suffer because I was not a good teacher. I failed you. I failed you. I could have done more to save you, Dhruman Baba said. Anjali and Deepa saw something change in the Lal Chudel. A cloud of sadness now shadowed the demon's face. Human emotions rose from within and graced the scarred evil features of her face. For a brief moment, she was the Rudra Devi of old. You were more than a teacher to me. You were like my father, the Lal Chudel said. I am sorry, daughter. Let these people go. I will do my best to restore your life essence, even if it costs me my life, Dhruman Baba said amidst sobs. Yes, it will cost you your life, the Lal Chudel said, the evil smile returning to her mouth, the blackness in her soul restored to its former glory. She stabbed the Baba repeatedly in his lower belly with what looked like a ceremonial knife carved from human bones. No! Anjali and Deepa shouted as they lunged forwards, as if their actions could reverse the atrocity that had just been committed. Dhruman Baba staggered backwards, clutching his wound, and he fell to the ground. The two women rushed to his aid. They placed their hands on his wound to stop the bleeding and caressed his face. We will get you out of here, Baba, Deepa said. I don't have the time to waste on this pity party, the Lal Chudel said. Both of you, leave that man and come to me at once, she said, waving the bloody knife, or I will plunge this into the necks of those two. The Lal Chudel pointed at the two teenage girls who were hugging each other in mortal fear, shaking uncontrollably like leaves in a storm. Anjali looked at the lifeblood draining out of Dhruman Baba's gaping wound, and then she glanced at the two helpless young souls whose life depended on what the two women did next. You will leave them alone? Anjali asked the Lal Chudel. I will, the Lal Chudel said. I am a woman of my word. I have no use for them after the Mahavidya ritual is completed. Come to me. Anjali looked at Deepa and nodded. Deepa nodded back. Deepa placed a hand on Anjali's face. I wish we had more time to celebrate the incredible, rare love we have for each other. I wish I could have been a better friend. I wish. Anjali fought back tears briefly and then gave into the urge to weep. Me too, Deepa. I wish. There is no other way, Deepa said. This would mean your niece will live. Yes, thank you, Anjali said, acknowledging the sacrifice her friend was willingly making to save the life of others, including her relative. The women rested Dhruman Baba's bleeding body on the ground gently. We are so sorry, Baba, Deepa said. Nimisha, I want you to hold on to that girl closely and get her out of this hell. Promise me you will do it. Promise me you will survive and thrive, Anjali said, turning to her niece. No, Auntie, come with us. We can't do this without you, Nimisha said. The other girl whimpered, despair written on her tear-stained face. You can do this. You have to, Anjali said. I love you. Now, I can wait no longer. You can come right now, or all of you die to fulfill my bloodlust. Your choice, the Lal Chudel said. Deepa grabbed onto Anjali, and they slowly walked to their doom. Anjali turned around one more time to look at the young girls they had just saved. She tried to smile, but the fear of what was going to happen next froze her facial muscles. They continued their march into the arms of evil. "Yes, yes," the Lalchadel said, spreading her arms out as if to embrace her new wards. Anjali felt Deepa's tight squeeze on her hands as they walked abreast towards the waiting arms of the Lalchadel. A demonic smile was plastered across her face. The beautiful and the disfigured sides of her face pulsed with the thrill of the upcoming kill. Worms crawled underneath her flesh in delirious patterns of joy. "Yes, yes, come on, my children, come to me," she said. Suddenly, the two women heard Baba's loud and feverish chanting, and a powerful gust of wind rushed into the cavern, threatening to unbalance them. The two women turned around to see the injured Baba sitting up, both his hands raised in the air, lips moving rapidly as he hurled powerful mantras at his enemy. A golden rope surfed through the roaring gust. It writhed like a snake as it headed for the Lalchadel, who was utterly shocked by this new development. Her rotten face now wore a mask of surprise. The golden restraint wrapped itself around the demon in the blink of an eye. "No, no!" she screamed. It bound her tightly, squeezing her vile form harder every time she tried to bite or claw at it. Her screams grew louder as she fought to escape her prison. "I don't know if it will hold her there forever. You must escape," the Baba said. "I will try to destroy her, and if that is not possible, imprison her in this underground tomb. Either way, I must be present to see it through. You must go," the Baba said. "Deepa, get the kids out of here," Anjali said to her friend. She then proceeded to lift Dhruman Baba up from the floor. "Nobody gets left behind. No one is sacrificing their lives today," she said. The strict fitness regime that Anjali followed as a policewoman came in handy as she draped one of Baba's arms around her shoulder. She placed her own hand on his back and guided him out of the cavern. "No, child, I must stop her. Also, I am in no condition," the Baba said. But Anjali ignored his protestations. They both glanced back at the Lalchadel, who was now shouting curses at her former teacher as the rope dug deep channels into her decaying form, extracting green pus and pitch-black rivulets of blood. Worms spurted out from her ears and nostrils. The more the demon fought the rope, the tighter it wound around her. "I have to give it to you, Baba. That was a great trick. I think you have given her the death she deserves," Anjali said as she continued escorting Dhruman Baba. "You don't know how powerful she is," the Baba said. The gang of 5 trundled through a tunnel which opened up to a huge cavern decorated with stalagmites and stalactites, spear-shaped rocky formations that grew on the floor or ceilings of ancient caves. In some parts of the cave, the two structures had met in the middle to form rocky columns that looked like reedy melted candles. "I must rest for a few moments before I can conjure a portal to take us away from here," the Baba said. The more people I have to transport through the veil of reality, the more magic I need, he said. Deepa's brows furrowed. She wasn't sure the Baba was in any shape to tap into his powers. The wound in his belly still leaked fresh blood. Anjali sat him down and propped him against a rock. The screams of the Lal Chudel, which had previously echoed through the cave, died down. "Is she dead?" Nimisha asked. "I think so," Deepa said abruptly. Then a moment later, she corrected herself. I would like to think so." Dhruman Baba groaned as he adjusted his seating position. He closed his eyes and brought both his hands to his chest to form an Ang Mudra. He uttered a prayer which was punctuated with praises for the eternal power of Shiva and Shakti. Deepa, Anjali and the two girls joined in on the prayers, even as they glanced around nervously. They prayed for their safety. They prayed for the revival of Baba's powers. They prayed. But clearly, their prayers failed to penetrate the walls of the cave and reach the divine powers beyond. The group slowly turned around to find the Lal Chudel cackling at them. Her naked, wounded form was ravaged by bleeding rope marks. Her face was carved open in places to reveal decayed flesh and white mold, like the inside of a fruit left out in summer for too long. Her tarnished skin was the domain of 1,000 squirming creatures from the depths of Patala. Dhruman Baba rose up slowly and staggered forward to join the group of women. "I know what I must do," he said within earshot of both Anjali and Deepa. "I was agonizing over the fact that I had failed to protect one dear daughter. But now, I get to save 4 daughters," Dhruman Baba said with a satisfied smile. He made it a point to touch each of his wards on their shoulders as he speared to the front to face the Lal Chudel. "Good," the Lal Chudel said. "Now you can all die together." Deepa was suddenly filled with a rage born of desperation and hatred, and she rushed at the demon. The Lal Chudel raised one finger on her left hand and made a slashing motion, the tips of her finger glowing with an unearthly blue light. An angry red slash appeared across Deepa's right hand, and the part below her elbow was torn away. The severed limb landed with a thud on the floor and rolled for some distance before coming to a permanent rest. The Lal Chudel made a fist with both her hands and raised her eyes to the ceiling. The rock ceiling cracked, and tiny rocks and powdery soil rained down on the terrified group of women. The demon's intentions were clear. She would bring the sharp arrow tips of the rock formation that dripped down from the ceiling onto the humans. Once they were incapacitated, she would liberally tear into their mortal flesh and take what she wanted. Deepa and Anjali would gift her their sacred connection, which would help her restore her form. Then, when she was beautiful again, she would move on to the others. She would take special pleasure in disfiguring Dhruman Baba. She would bite off his nose, poke holes in the flesh of his cheeks, scoop out his eyes, drape his intestine around her, and dance in the darkness while she laughed and laughed. She had something special planned for the 2 young girls. She would transform them into her blind acolytes. eyeless slaves who would help her in her rituals as she ascended the ranks of mages in the halls of Lord Varaha as the greatest Tantrika in the world. Dhruman Baba moved forward. He drew the shape of a yantra made of intersecting stars in the air, his fingers tearing fiery lines into the fabric of reality. You know what your problem is, child. You never learn from your mistakes because you're too arrogant. The Mahavidya ritual doesn't just help you extract your soul from the depths of Naraka. It also opens a portal to it. You know this. Your face and your form was the reward for previously toying with things you did not understand. But now, you have opened the gates to your doom of your own volition, and I will atone for my sins by walking you through it, Dhruman Baba said. The Lal Chudel stopped using her psychic energy to bring down the roof of the cave. A look of absolute horror was smeared across her face.
What are you doing? She barked.
Dhruman Baba clapped 3 times as a darkness beyond darkness, an oval filled with rippling currents of an ocean in the pitch black of night, formed underneath her. Dhruman Baba leapt forward, screaming with anger, and dragged the monster down with him into the portal that tunneled down into the depths of Naraka. His tight embrace was met with furious attempts to escape as they began their descent. The Lal Chudel screeched and clawed at his face and his back and his shoulders, tearing away huge chunks of flesh. Dhruman Baba gave Anjali, Deepa and the 2 girls one last look. Only his eyes were intact on his bloody, ruined face, and they were filled with the joy of knowing that he had done the right thing. The borders of the portal merged like 2 dark bodies of water coming together to seal a great rift in time and space. One last scream of hatred from the Lal Chudel escaped through the magical seal and echoed through the chambers of the cave system. If you listened closely, you could hear the triumphant cries of the Lal Chudel's former victims, enmeshed in the horrible waveform of that sound. Anjali and Deepa nervously waited in front of the wooden door of a 7th-floor suburban apartment. They glanced at each other and felt the same sense of surprise and gratitude they had felt every single day of the last few months. Surprised that they had survived a dangerous ordeal together. Grateful that they were able to save at least 2 other lives from the clutches of a vile demon. They were mostly unscathed by the encounter. Well, mostly. Deepa stroked the bandaged stump of her right limb. It still throbbed and ached. The mental scars both Anjali and Deepa bore would sting and burn for longer. Anjali placed an understanding hand on Deepa's shoulder. A woman in her mid-50s opened the door. There was a nobility to her face. Her graying hair and her fiercely intelligent eyes exuded great wisdom. The big red bindi on her forehead had an Om symbol in the middle of it. She wore a bright blue sari with slashes of silk embroidery that complemented her natural beauty. "Ma'am, I'm Anjali, and this is my friend Deepa. We spoke on the phone," Anjali said. "I guessed as much. Namaste. I'm Ekta," the woman said with folded hands. Ekta ji lovingly invited them to her home, which was decorated with teak furniture and velvet cushions. Stunning murals depicting tales from Indian mythology decorated the walls of the house. "Let's have some chai. Ekta said. Anjali and Deepa were struck by Ektaji's presence and effortless charisma as they conversed about their health and their current situation. It was like speaking to a human being who was a combination of a loving mother and a learned sadhu. Ektaji's tone oozed warmth and concern and a genuine sense of curiosity. Anjali and Deepa briefed Ektaji about their encounters with the Lalchudale, all the way up to the final encounter. Then a maid arrived with a smile and cups of tea, and when she left, the conversation turned to Dhruman Baba's final moments. "You were with him when?" Ektaji said with great sadness. Her visitors proceeded to tell her how Dhruman Baba had sacrificed himself. Ektaji sat listening in silence. She occasionally wiped teardrops that escaped the corners of her eyes. Narrating their experiences was equally overwhelming for Deepa and Anjali. They too cried in the course of the telling of the tale. "That's him. That's the Dhruman Baba I knew," Ektaji said, finally lifting her cup of tea up to her lips. Deepa and Anjali then proceeded to tell her about their adventurous escape from the bowels of the cave system. Looking for an entrance in the darkness, struggling against the ticking clock that was the blood loss from Deepa's bandaged, wounded arm. "We got lucky. God was watching over us," Deepa said, reminiscing about how they emerged into the sunlight. She remembered very little of the chopper ride to the hospital afterwards, but she clearly remembered exiting the mouth of a tiny cave and stepping onto the grassy floor of the Narakaranya forest. Sunlight had greeted her like the warm embrace of a lover. The sounds of nature acted like a balm, soothing her scarred mind filled with the screams of the Lalchudale and the sight of grotesque cocoons bearing the bodies of dead and disfigured teenage girls. "Both of you did well. I am so proud of you. Facing up to a monster like that is no small feat," Ektaji said. "And thank you for sharing the story with me. I know this is not easy for you," Ektaji said. "We wouldn't be here had it not been for Babaji," Deepa said. Anjali nodded in agreement, sorrow writ large on her face. "Me neither," Ektaji said. One more thing," Anjali said. She pulled out a folded sheet of paper from her cloth bag. It looked like a greeting card made by a child. The paper was from an old ruled notebook, and there was a crude crayon drawing of a bearded man attacking what looked like a two-headed demon on the front of it. Inside the greeting card was the dried remains of a daisy flower. Dhruman Baba's assistants who were cleaning up the ashram after his demise asked me to give this to you. The person who gave it to me said, "It should be with you now," Anjali said. "Oh, yes, that must be Nandalal. I know him," Ektaji said as she accepted the card. Ektaji held it in her hands gently. She looked at the front page illustration with a mixture of disgust and fondness. She opened the card and stroked the facing page with the floral adornment. A smile lit up her face, which soon turned into an uncontrollable sob. Her tears fell on the old parchment like rain. Anjali and Deepa got up from their seat and placed themselves on either side of Ektaji. They gently stroked her back. Ektaji wiped her tears away and embraced both of them. "Thanks for this, girls. Thank you. It means so much." They spoke like long-lost friends for many more hours, learning more about Ektaji's history as an occult practitioner, a banisher of demons, and as a mother and a wife. When it was time to go, Deepa, who had just exited the door to the apartment, turned around and said to Ektaji, "I hope one day we will banish all these hellish creations from the face of the earth, forever." "There is always hope, my child, as long as there are people willing to fight back against the darkness," Ektaji said.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.